We are so back with another new season of We Do a Little Pod, and we are proud to announce that we've partnered with our good friends over at Schiller to co-present Season 5. I've been advising Schiller for the last year as they help consult and market some of the most vibrationally aligned companies in the space. They're releasing their new season of Curated alongside this season of We Do a Little, so be on the lookout for new episodes from them, including some of our favorite people such as Brian Brakeman, Sasha Stiles, Chris F., and more. Links to their podcast are in the description of the episode. We'll also be doing a little event together during Art Basel Miami this year, so stay tuned for more details on that. If you'd like to sponsor Season 5 of We Do a Little or Curated, please reach out to info@schiller.xyz. That is info@schiller.xyz. Without further ado, let's dive into this week's episode. The first episode of Season 5, we are joined by the one and only Derek Edwards. Derek is one of the most kind and thoughtful people we know. He's a managing partner at Collab Currency, which is a crypto-focused venture firm investing at the crossroads of culture and consumer technology. He's also a co-founder of Glitch Marfa, an analog gallery for digital objects stationed in the heart of Marfa, Texas. We dive into Derek's background before falling into the crypto rabbit hole, the investment theses behind Collab Currency, the founding of Glitch Marfa, thoughts on AI, how he met his wife, balancing multiple portfolios between personal venture, DAO, and more. As always, this podcast is for entertainment purposes only and should not be relied upon for investment decisions. Andy, Deeze, and guests may be invested in companies or tokens talked about on this podcast.
This is Andy.
Yeah, I'm Deeze.
GM, we're back again with another episode. We Do a Little. We are here this time with Derek Edwards, NFT NYC Week 2024.
Let's go.
Rainy, miserable.
Gross fucking week.
Every time we're in New York,
it's looking
raining.
brutal out there for
and
sure.
It's cloudy. Derek is co-founder of Glitch Marfa, fellow DAO mate, and a bunch of the DAOs we're in, managing partner at Collab. And, you know, just an overall super thoughtful, super
I appreciate that.
Chad. So Derek, just start off. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. The weather is a little brutal, for sure. It's definitely a little different than sunny Los Angeles, where I just came from. We're on day 2 of NFT NYC. So last night was we had a little event at my office out on Bowery, which was a lot of fun. A bunch of crypto artists came out. A bunch of my founders who are working on gaming projects were giving demos. I think we had 6 of them in breakout rooms. And then we had just a couple hundred people stop by and play games and hang out and drink and eat pizza.
Sounds like the perfect night.
Yeah.
You didn't stay up too late.
Didn't
You didn't black out. You're not hungover today.
No.
You were here early.
I was here early.
9 times out of 10, our 10 a.m. starts at 10:30, just because it's
Awesome.
like, oh yeah, I was that late. It's maybe my
Half the
fault.
time it's Deeze's fault.
Yeah,
I believe
but
it.
the fact you were here at 9:50,
Yeah,
like
gotta be early for the pod.
appreciate the courtesy.
Absolutely.
All right, where do I want to go with this? In LA, do you live there?
I do. Yeah, yeah.
And how often are you in the city? Because you said you have an office here.
Yeah, so I have a couple of folks on my investment team that work out of that office full time. I would say I'm probably in New York. Let's call it like 4 or 5 times a year. Usually for about a week and a half at a time.
How many people are on the collab team now?
That's what I was gonna ask.
Yeah, so for the first, let's call it like 2-3 years, it was really just me and Steve. So we're the managing partners. It was just us making investments pretty much through Fund 2. So we're on Fund 3 now and going out to raise Fund 4 later this year. I would say over the last 18 months, we realized like to really become like efficient at the emerging categories that were happening, we really needed to hire a great team. So that's largely where a lot of my focus has been over the last couple of years, is finding great people to kind of work with closely in very specific verticals. So we have 5 on the investment team now. And then we have a bunch of back office folks who are amazing. So we're about a team of 10.
Oh, wow, so
Yeah.
it's grown quite a bit.
Yeah.
What's the origin story of the company?
Yeah. So Collab Currency, we actually spun out of a large or then larger fund called Collaborative Fund. And Collaborative Fund is OG venture. They're led by a guy named Craig Shapiro. Have been doing consumer investments, early stage consumer investments for, let's call it 14, 15 years. So they were early investors in things like Reddit, Quora, Lyft, Beyond Burger, Angel List. I mean, you look at their portfolio, it's just like slam dunk after slam dunk over the last 14 years. 2016, 2017, they started dipping their toes into crypto. They brought in my business partner, Steve, to kind of help with the investing out of the main fund. Steve did that for, I think, about a year and a half. He brought me in. We ended up spinning out the separate pool of capital out of Collaborative Fund and calling it Collab Currency. So that's when I formally joined as the second partner. And that was early 2020. So Collab Currency kind of really officially started in early 2020.
Was that first fund basically fully LP'd by the parent fund?
Largely, yes. That's correct. Yeah. And then, in consecutive funds, we've raised our own capital, and some of those LPs continue to come along for the ride. But we largely run independent at this point.
And how did you and Steve meet?
Yeah. So Steve and I have a very fun history. So I went to law school and business school. And in my second year, or my third year of law school, and my second year of business school, Steve was a first-year PhD finance professor, and he was teaching one of the finance classes at the business school. He was roughly the same age as a bunch of us, because business school, you're all kind of a little bit older, and he was in his first year teaching. And so a bunch of us in his first class became friends with him. And he ended up starting a business with a few of my classmates in business school that I advised on. So I got to know Steve quite well. This was, I want to say it was 2011, 2012 at this point. And then since that point, we've worked on maybe 4 or 5 different projects. So I started my own consumer products company that he was an advisor on. I advised his consumer products company. We ended up publishing a bunch of stuff together. We ran a small venture fund in Oregon together at one point. I ended up teaching at the University of Oregon where he was still teaching. This was 2017, 2018. So we kind of started spending more time together. And he was then starting to advise Collaborative Fund's crypto stuff. I was publishing about crypto around that time, mostly about regulated assets on blockchains. So we were pretty much the only two in Eugene, Oregon, which is where the business school was, that were into crypto. I was spending an inordinate amount of time thinking about it and writing about it and publishing about it. And so it just kind of became a natural fit to kind of work together on this.
How did you get crypto pilled? Like, were you, back OG Bitcoin days? Were you more like, oh, Ethereum's lit?
Yeah.
I'm getting into
He was
this?
actually a drug dealer.
I mean,
Exactly.
Eugene, Oregon. I don't think you need to.
So I had a buddy in business school who had started doing these poker nights with Bitcoin. This would have been like 2013, I want to say 2014.
So he was very early.
Blessed buddy.
Well, so I will say, like, that's when I first got exposed. But like, it didn't really click for me until 2017, where I had a bunch of friends I had a friend who was on the East Coast that had just sold his company that was spending all of his time doing ICO stuff, and he was trying to explain it to me, and I was like, this seems like
Sketchy as shit.
securities. There seems like you're implicating securities here with these ICOs, but I didn't really recognize like what was happening. So I ended up writing actually a bunch of articles about kind of the regulatory implications of ICOs. So like my initial exposure to the space was like, I think this is actually there's some securities issues with like how this stuff is happening.
You weren't wrong.
I wasn't wrong. And then I started really like going deep on sovereign money and sovereign commodity digital money, and starting to think about why protocols on blockchains were interesting. And then just, fell in love with like the design space.
Yeah, I think I had like a similar kind of thing where it's like you learn about Bitcoin, you're like, all right, this is interesting. But for me, it was like learning about Ethereum and how
100%.
and like the programmability. At the time for me, same time, 2017, it was less like the ICO stuff because I was young. I'd like just graduated from college. But it was like, oh, I could build StockX on the blockchain and trade sneakers.
Once that clicked,
because I was already doing that.
Yeah.
And I was like, holy shit, this is really cool.
It's where my mind started spinning and why I just fell totally head over heels for the technology.
Yeah.
It's like it's limitless, the things you can do with the design space. And once that part of your brain switches on, it's like nothing else is interesting.
Yeah.
What was the consumer goods company that you founded and was working on before?
Yeah, so it was an apparel company, licensed apparel company. So we worked with every major university in the United States and Canada.
Gotcha.
And essentially, I guess like a number of brands as well. It started as a business school project. It was like, let's see if we can kind of like get some POs and mess around with this, and it kind of blew up in like our region. And so a bunch of us so I took the bar exam, passed, decided I didn't want to practice right away.
Yeah.
And so I was like, let's just hack on this for a couple of years. And we did. And it was fun. And we grew it up. It became it went from a very small project to a very big project. Had a bunch of employees. We ended up getting essentially like acqui-hired into this much larger player in our region. I stayed in that transition for a few years and then left. And then that company ended up selling, and a number of those employees that I brought along are still around. Some of them are still around there. Some of them are off doing their own thing.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It's always cool to hear what people were doing before they found crypto, because like it's all sorts of stuff. Some people are like, I was working construction.
Yeah.
You're like, you were working construction. Like, and then other people are like, found a company,
Totally.
got acquired, took what I learned.
We need everybody, right?
So-
Like this. Yeah, go ahead.
No, just before you get off that, like, did you know you're going to law school, doing these things? Did you kind of in the back of your mind know you wanted to be doing your own companies, doing more entrepreneurial stuff, even though you were kind of going the law school route? Or
Yeah.
did that just kind of come?
That's a good question. So, there's like the honest answer, and then there's like the kind of like not so honest answer. I don't even know which one's which anymore. But the truth is, like, when I was so I did law school and business school at the same time. There was 3 of us in the whole program that were doing that. And I would say the 3 of us had finished our first 2 years of law school before we started our first year of business school. And by your second year of business school or law school, you kind of have a feeling of like whether or not you really want to practice law or not. And I come from a family of attorneys. My younger brother still practices. My dad runs his own law firm. I've been exposed to the field of law for a very long time. But I would say I intuitively knew that like I just didn't want to do it. And so I started to take more business law classes, I would say, towards the end of my second year of business school. It's why I took the GMAT and went to business school and started doing the dual program. I think I hadn't quite understood like that I wanted to start my own business, that I wanted to, work in venture or be an entrepreneur. But I think I did start to realize like this was not what I wanted to spend 100% of my time doing.
Yeah, I used to work, fun fact, for the Supreme Court of Ohio, and I spent way too much time. I'm not a law guy, I was IT guy, but just spent way too much time around lawyers, justices, elected officials, and it's just like, I couldn't imagine that being my life. Like, I could definitely understand where you go through it, and you're just like, yeah, this is going to be a long life.
Totally. And I would say like, not to like toot my own horn, but I'm a pretty high performer. So like I did very well.
Yeah.
And so it was like a thing I had to grapple with, which was like, there was a very specific track that was laid out for me in the field of law, and like to work on an apparel company right after passing the bar was like a pretty big pivotal decision.
Because you can like kind of lay out, I feel like with being a lawyer, or like my wife who does taxes, and she was at KPMG, and it was like, there's this clear path to becoming a partner at a law firm or a partner at these places, and to stray from that, like it's like a time commitment, but if you put in the work and the hours, you kind of just know what the end position is, unless you fuck up along the way. Yeah. And so, it's
exactly it. It's like, what the next 8 years are going to look like. You know how much money you're going to make. You know what is about to happen. And to kind of like put that aside and just jump into this pool of uncertainty was that I think was like the moment of like where I was like, okay, I have full control on my destiny at this point.
When you go ahead. When you were dabbling with crypto, how did the transition go from liking Ethereum, liking what that affords, to like finding NFTs, finding digital art, generative art?
Yeah.
How did that transition go?
Yeah. So there was like a 2.5 year period. So when I found NFTs, I was already running Collab Currency. But I would say there's a 2.5 year period before that where I just wanted to like play with the tech. And that means like playing with every protocol. That means pinging founders of protocols and projects and like asking them random questions. And I would say that natural curiosity for how the tech could be used, I think, is one of the reasons why I understood NFTs so early. So I would say early 2020, I got a pitch deck on my desk from Super Rare. Like they were raising their seed round, and they could not put that round together because I think a lot of it was trying to explain to the public, like it wasn't, the business was solid. Like you went on Super Rare, there was artists making art and selling it. There was collectors collecting art and speculating on it or buying it or supporting artists. There was a whole feed, like the super early feed on Twitter and on their web app was popping. It was like, this sold for $37. This sold for $129. And you could see like there was real like markets being formed around this work. But they had to explain the business of super rare through the lens of why an NFT was interesting, and no investor like understood or got it. It's like, this could be right clicked and saved was like the
Why would I want that?
exactly. And I would say I was a little dismissive on my first call with John. Not dismissive, like I'm never dismissive to entrepreneurs, but I would say I was a little bit skeptical that like digital art was a thing. This was very early 2020. And I took the weekend, I remember, and I was like on Super. I spent a bunch of time on Super. I was like, I bought some stuff. I started like seeing what collectors were talking about. And I remember on Sunday night, I emailed my partner, Steve, and I was like, we got to get on another call with John. Like, this is fucking awesome.
I get it now.
Yeah, I totally get it. And so we ended up doing that seed round with one confirmation. I ended up writing a piece, and I worked pretty heavily with the Super Rare team to kind of like get their insights. I also had a bunch of friends in the contemporary art space that I like bounced a bunch of ideas around like the comp between digital art and contemporary traditional art to put together a piece that summer called You're Sleeping on Crypto Art. And I published it, I think I published it towards the end of summer or midsummer or something.
Good timing.
It's great timing, right before things just started exploding.
Were you active in the contemporary art space prior?
So my wife now, girlfriend then, is an artist.
Oh,
so
wow, very
she's
cool.
a performance artist. She's performed in New York and LA and London and everywhere. So I had friends that growing up in Los Angeles, I would say the thing people are most drawn to are the arts.
Yeah.
So I have folks that, you know, write scripts for movies. They work on TV sets. They become artists. And so, like, you're just kind of around it your whole life. You go to shows very early on. You're seeing friends and family perform on things. So I would say my exposure was pretty deep for most of my life. And I think maybe that was another reason why I kind of understood it. It's like you could now, so my wife was a dancer, and the performance work that she would make, I remember having conversations with her about this in like 2016. It was like not sellable. It's like you pay for a ticket, you go to the show, but there's nothing that she can actually, it's a very ephemeral work, right? Dance.
She's not getting royalties on Spotify.
She's not getting royalties on Spotify. And so I remember brainstorming with her in like 2016 and 2017, like, you know, she would do these residencies and have hundreds of people and see write-ups for her work, but like there was nothing to consume other than the ephemerality of like the work itself. And so like that idea of being able to like make tangible something that was not previously not tangible, I think that may have been one of the reasons why like I was able to grok the NFT thing so quickly. I mean, that's essentially what we're doing here. We're taking this wrapper, we're putting it around a media that could be right-clicked and saved or deleted or is ephemeral and not valuable, and creating this scarcity wrapper, putting on this blockchain. And once you do that, it can be priced and bid by a global market. And I think having played with the technology in weird ways, having come from a somewhat of an art background, these things were just like, I think I was able to kind of put the pieces together early.
Were you collecting traditional art as well before?
I wasn't.
No.
And largely because I would say like the art market as it exists today, however it's valued, the $5 trillion art market is largely for a very specific set of buyer. Yeah. It's for someone who's
for Steve Cohen.
It's for Steve Cohen. It's someone who's trying to preserve wealth, someone who is, able to participate in like these economic games around artists. But it's not for people who have, $10,000 that want to, throw at something.
Yeah.
And this is like the power of the stuff we're doing all the time now. It's really made accessible the creative class in a way that wasn't possible because we have this global market that runs 24/7 and this scarcity wrapper that can be put around any piece of media. And that power, I think, is unlocking a brand new category of buyer. It's like us, right? It's people who also enjoy the arts, that want to support and patron the arts, that want to, preserve wealth, but are doing it earlier on at a lower denomination. And then as these things grow and get bigger, it's creating massive amounts of wealth.
Yeah, and the transparency of it is so nice because for me, I was never somebody who would walk into a gallery and ask how much something was.
Yeah.
And like, I would feel out of place. Whereas
100%.
when I'm in my boxers on the couch,
What's the floor?
on the laptop. Not even the floor. Just like I'm enjoying, and no one can judge me. It's like I'm not in the gallery. If it's just
What's the floor?
It
Oh,
opens
Jesus,
up a whole
dude.
different class.
It's true. It does open up the riffraff class for
And
sure.
then you have people who like, kind of like the velocity of the money. It's like if you put 10 ETH into a sale, half the time that artist's taking 5 of that ETH, putting it into another sale.
Totally.
Then they're taking 2.5 of that 5, and then the
Yeah.
next thing you know, the 10 ETH you put in just led to 20 ETH worth of sales because it trickled down.
Totally.
So you were obviously pretty early to the crypto art stuff, and you had like established kind of a thesis for it. Was there anything? I'm sure the answer is yes, but like, is there anything that stood out to you that you were actively wrong about with NFT art, where you like? Because I mean, obviously, in the grand scheme of things, you were pretty right. But was there something where you thought it would go a particular way, or you thought something would happen that didn't play out that way?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say there's 2 ways to think about it. There's like the infrastructure and the financialization of crypto art, and like I can talk about my thoughts there. And then there's like the what is consumable part of crypto art. And I think maybe I'll start with the second one. It's how the wrapper, so in the case of Ethereum, the ERC 721 could be used to make valuable new categories of media that previously weren't valuable. And like one-of-one art and generative art and a number of other categories like have become like these massive, I mean, I can't remember what the most recent numbers are, but billions of dollars at this point are now being stored in these objects. I think Punks alone is a $2 billion market cap, and Squiggles is like 200 million, and Glyphs are like 400 million. It's like a non-trivial amount of money is now being stored. But if I look at things like music NFTs, for example, or if I look at things like dynamic NFTs that like evolve, or like things that like async art was doing.
Yeah.
These are all things that like I still feel very confident on will exist in the future, and people will want to preserve wealth and store value in these things, much like they do one-of-ones or generative art. But the timeline for consumption seems to be a little bit further out. If you had to ask me, like, do I think music is going on blockchains and will be enjoyed by, it's billions of people in the future? Like, yes, of course. Like, I think we all think in this room that like blockchains are going to eat all types of categories of value in the future. It's just a better database structure by which to create markets around. But like for a variety of reasons, I think like the music NFT space has been a little bit slower. And I've been an investor in a number of these projects. I think it's going to be a massive category in the future. I don't know if that market is quite ready for it. Gaming is another one, and I know you asked about art, but I think these things are.
Yeah, I think I generally mean NFTs.
Yeah.
NFTs. I think gaming is another one where. So I did Axie Infinity. I think we've probably invested in about 25 or 30 games on Web3 at this point. I've done Pixels. I've done a number of games that I think I've broken down and found product market fit around specific categories. But if I look at the tolerance for gaming and Web3 by the larger global market, it's very intolerant, right? Like people are not excited to like financialize their games. And I've been playing this game called Helldivers 2. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it.
Yeah.
You are. I mean, that's a great game, and I'm having fun playing it with like old friends and family. It doesn't need a blockchain for me to enjoy it. And so I think the gap for many has been, how do we make these things the same level of like enjoyment, and also maybe have these objects or avatars or things that are part of this gameplay be ownable in some unique way that adds to the enjoyment instead of kind of like creates a completely new type of market or new type of buyer, new type of person.
Yeah, that makes sense. I had a friend, one of our friends who our producer Lewis plays Helldivers with.
Yeah.
And he's, tangentially into crypto because he's been my friend for forever. And so I just bully my friends until they buy crypto. But like he plays a lot of video games, and I was asking him about like gaming stuff. And I thought he had a really good point, just kind of like as a normal user, where his like negative sentiment towards combining crypto and gaming was like, I already feel like all these games are trying to milk me for as much money as possible. And like adding crypto to it just feels like it's that on steroids. And so it's like, I think a lot of it too from traditional gamers comes from like a distrust of the gaming industry already, where it's like, I don't totally trust crypto. I don't totally trust game developers.
The Venn diagram is not.
And so like, why would I want to combine those things and have it be like this crazy microtransaction, pay for everything? And so I think that like a lot of that will also just take a few really killer games that break that like negative mold or negative narrative, and be like, see, you can just like play a game that's really fucking fun, and make money doing it. And I think it needs a couple of those to hit, and then things will.
I think you're right. Change. I'll also just add the irony of that, and I totally agree with everything you just said. I'm seeing the same thing. The irony is that I was playing things like Diablo 2 and World of Warcraft in the early 2000s, and I was selling my accounts.
I know, yeah.
And I was doing the things that this technology makes infinitely easier. And for whatever reason, there's still this massive like distrust of this system that I think organically will start to get tempered over time.
I agree too.
But it is a little, I don't even know what the right word is, but I just find it fascinating that like this is the promised land for like everything that we were trying to do 25 years ago. And there's still a bunch of distrust.
Like I remember my friends getting like Halo accounts to level 50 just to sell them online. And
you'd sell them for Microsoft points. You'd be like, you'd spend $8 on a 1 month, and your buddy would have an account that would be used for boosting. So it had like jacked up MMR. You would do team doubles with your buddy for a week, and then you would sell that account for $50. And then you're like, I made $42.
There you go.
Just playing video games.
I'm a fucking shit. Why would I get a job?
Yeah, or like speaking of Diablo, you have like the friend come in after he hit some crazy item in the game, and he's like, dude, I just sold it for $200 on the marketplace.
The World of Warcraft to crypto pipeline is so strong. I mean, I couldn't play WoW because our computer growing up didn't have a graphics card. I had the same computer for 10 years. So I only played RuneScape because it's Java, works in browser. But it's the same idea of like, we can sell this account for $2,000. We can sell these items for $1,000. Everyone was using PayPal. We would have killed to be able to just take the gold from the game, go to Uniswap, and swap it for the PayPal dollars. And when you find crypto, it's like, well, this is kind of like WoW. Like this space to me is like WoW or RuneScape on steroids.
Yeah.
We now have an infinite backpack, but it's called a wallet. You could fit as much as you want. There's no bank constraint of like, oh, I only have this many slots. Oh, I can only have this much weight.
You got right into my veins, dude. This is exactly how I think about it.
What do you kind of think of? I don't know that I totally subscribe to this myself, but I get the idea of it, that like crypto gaming isn't actually that exciting because like the crypto world in and of itself is kind of already the grand exchange, and like already like what Deeze is talking about, already a game. Like, to me, when crypto is in a bull market, I basically stop playing video games because it's more fun to sit on deck screener.
I play bull market.
And so like, how do you kind of reconcile those two different sentiments of like actual crypto games and just like once you get into crypto, it's all kind of a game? So
it's a really great question. I will say if you just tweak the abstraction layer and make it more interesting to look at, but it's still very fundamentally what it like. My view is like this is certainly why things like Axie Infinity and Pixels and a number of projects that have really leaned into the crypto economic piece and not the, let's call it like the AAA gaming piece, have performed well. It's right. It's very clear to me that you just tweak the abstraction layer slightly, but really understand the principles of what it means to own things and earn things and sell things, just like you would on a deck screener or on an OpenSea or a Blur, that you can actually create like very compelling game loops around it. You can create an environment that leverages a lot of the behaviors you're describing, but in a game format. And so I think the question then, like the question inherently you're asking is like, well, how do we get to that next stage, which is like the AAA game? And I think it's probably going to be a founding team that straddles experience in things like game design and also things like crypto economic design, so that they can leverage the things that are working around this infinite wallet and playing deck screener and playing, like crypto, the game, and taking those core principles and baking it into actually like a very compelling visual abstraction that people want to spend time immersing themselves in.
Speaking of crypto, the game, are you playing round 2?
I'm not playing round 2. I just have a little bit too much, but I'm seeing all the tweets pop up and it sounds like it's going to be a lot of fun. So
I'll probably get kicked out again. I haven't chosen if I'm going to be anonymous or I feel like I have to be anonymous.
Yeah.
The first season, I got to close to the end. I think I got to like night 7 or 8. And it was just a point where if anybody voted for you one time, you were going to get kicked out.
Yeah.
And like 2 people voted for me because if you scroll down the list, it's like vote out the fucking influencers that have followers because they'll probably get votes at the end.
Totally.
And then the guy who won was this like super nice Japanese guy who was like writing everybody poems and
Love
like
it.
being very pacifist. And I probably, in a bear market, it's more fun to play because the pot is very enticing. But like right now, I can go to deck screener, type in Ansem, look at 27 different tokens based on Ansem's hat, Ansem's mom, Ansem's dad, Ansem's cat,
sure.
Ansem's kid. And I can just bet on that, and I might have this better odds of turning
You probably
0.1
do.
ETH into 30 ETH. Like, it's just stupid time. So you're trying to weigh opportunity cost of playing everything. But the
Totally.
interesting thing right now is you can trade the ticket to play, and they're trading for a premium. So I minted mine just in case I decide I don't want to play. I can at least.
Well, I
trade
mean,
it.
because at the end of the game, it's really funny because when they released the first version, I actually think I liked it more because I basically wrote like a full smart contract to do this new version of Crypto the Game as NFTs, where you like can mint the NFTs for a price, and once you get out, it becomes a jury NFT, and you just can't get past the like the point that someone can just buy 51% of the people who got voted out and they win. And so I'm really curious to see what or how they try to
I
deal
think it
with
gets
that.
soul bound when it switches. Or
So, but you can know
something.
when it switches to jury, you can sell them.
In this?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
And so like I don't know how you get past the fact that like it just becomes a bribe at the end. So I'm really curious to see how they try to deal with that.
Yeah.
But I think the design space of like true PvP crypto games like that is really, really fun and really interesting.
Yeah.
It's very nascent. Like there's
Yeah.
really not that much. Like the first one was so crude with like the Flappy Bird. I never want to play Flappy Bird again. I think I played Flappy Bird for like 6 hours straight doing this shit. And I was playing on like a 49-inch screen so I could see everything. And I don't want to have to do that again. So I hope as this improves, it's like not like Pac-Man or Flappy Bird or like a game that is old and I don't know. Like there were certain times during that week where I was just upset. I'm like gonna spend 6 hours a day playing Pac-Man.
Yeah.
Like fuck, like I have to though for my tribe. And then
It's an investment of time for sure.
it's a few days. Like if you're doing it for 10 days, it's you gotta tell your wife like, hey, council, tonight at 8.
I'm busy.
Can't cook dinner.
Still
like,
love that.
Hey, you want to go get lunch, babe? No, I'm playing Pac-Man. I just my tribe member just sent me a video on how to beat the high score, so I'm dialed in right now.
Already,
We're trying to secure our retirement.
I can visualize that conversation.
The nice ones they did were like the puzzles where they were solved kind of quick because like if the puzzle's solved in an hour and someone gets immunity, it's like thank God I got 9 hours back of my time. But yeah, we'll see how that does. I think them being tradable is gonna be interesting.
Yeah, I'm
I
curious to see how it
thought
goes.
maybe I completely
I
misunderstood.
could also totally be wrong. too.
Yeah, I thought the way it worked was the initial thing is tradable, but once you get kicked out and it switches to jury, I don't know. Is there a way to change metadata and lock it at that point?
You probably could.
Because you can't just buy it up and, like you said, if you can 51% attack it for a price that is
Less than the price.
less than the pot, you're gonna do it.
Yeah.
And I don't know. But when kind of go back to the different verticals that Collab is investing in, you said you had 10 people. Some of them are focused on specific verticals. What are the verticals that Collab is most dialed in on?
Yeah, so it's definitely, I mean, as you guys know, the space changes on a dime.
Yes.
So like you kind of have to be flexible. So I guess I'll first start off by saying it's evolving and it continues to evolve. The categories that we've probably spent the most time over the last, let's call it 2 years, as like the folks have been coming in and we've really been kind of digging in on like these emergent categories. It's for sure Web3 gaming. It's definitely crypto art and like crypto media, I would say, which includes things like entertainment and music and just let's bundle it all together. Crypto social, crypto AI, which I would say is a decent chunk of our time is now spent there. I'm sure I'm forgetting stuff, and like crypto infrastructure, which like supports a lot of consumers. So we continue to do a lot of things around like I think about what is required for hundreds of millions, if not billions of people to enjoy this technology in the future. And typically it's going to be through, the highest layer of the stack, so a crypto app. But that crypto app will require very specific infrastructure to exist and to support what it means to kind of serve value to that many users. It could be things like embedded wallets. It could be things like, L2s. It could be, things that support PWAs. It could be a million different things that like are required there. And so I would say like infrastructure to support consumer is also like an area of focus.
And I'm curious, you mentioned that when you first got into crypto, you were interested in some of like the tokenization of things. Have you dabbled at all in like this new wave of real world asset stuff or?
Yeah. So I would say I spent an inordinate amount of time thinking about RWAs for many years. Like I would say, people can go back and read stuff I wrote. But I spent way too much time between 2018 and 2020 thinking about RWAs and the tokenization of real world assets through the lens at the time of things like deeds to your home or securities or, it could be anything. I think having spent so much time there, I have a lot of scar tissue on like what's required.
Yeah, I do as well.
Yeah. And so like I look at where we're at today and I'm like, okay, we're a little closer, but I'm also, so I'll kick off by saying like the fact that there's been this real institutionalization of the asset class in the last 6 months through the spot ETF approval, it does change the game quite a bit. It's like now you actually have latent demand from massive institutions to start participating in the category, which drives a lot of like regulatory functions. It drives a lot of infrastructure investments. It drives a lot of capital flows towards the category. And when you've got that much attention from regulators, from institutions, from technologists, things happen. Like they can happen quickly. Whereas a lot of the problems before were regulators just like were not supportive. And in many ways, they weren't supportive of, an RWA, for example, trading on Uniswap. Like they were like, there's no broker dealer license. There's, we have no way to get in touch with the issuer. These things have lockups and they're being freely tradable. It's like, it was a whole mess trying to get the tech to map with current laws. Whereas now I can probably paint a picture where things start to happen much quicker. That said, if you were going to ask me, like, do I think there is I guess I'll also step back and say there's a lot of ways to participate in this space. There are fucking infinite amount of categories that are going to get built on this technology. And so you have to be very specific with where you want to spend your time. And to me, I want to spend my time on things that are in scope, in focus to like support big markets tomorrow. Like I want to find things that are really pushing, at the bleeding edge of like consumer applications where like the regulatory scope isn't as like, narrow on it.
Totally.
So I guess the short answer to your question is like, I see a path where like that stuff's going to pick up. I have a lot of scar tissue there. I think we're still a little bit ways away for like things to really get big there. Yeah. But I could see a picture where it starts to happen sooner rather than later.
Yeah. No, I think that's a good way to put it. Back when I joined MakerDAO in the start of 2019, we were talking about on the smart contracts team, how do we support real world?
You were doing a thing with Fluidity. I remember like Fluidity Factora.
And then what's their name? They're still working with them. It starts with a C. Centrifuge.
Yep.
And so now, for context, it took 4 years.
It's been 4 years.
In 2023.
Since I was reading those white papers.
Yeah, they figured out something. And so now there's real world assets at Maker. But that's like the idea of the scope of time is,
it's a lot.
The team spent 4 years trying to figure it out. And it's like a large fucking team with a lot of money.
Yeah.
And so to be the startup who's going to figure out real world assets, like Godspeed. But like kind of the same vein of what you were saying, I think personally for me, I'm much more excited about digitally native assets.
Totally.
As we continue to get more and more digital as a society.
Yeah.
Like I just think that the total value of assets that live on the blockchain will continue to outpace the growth of real world assets on the blockchain.
So I love that you just said that. I was giving away this free shirt at my office last night.
I saw it on Twitter.
Okay, so this encapsulates some of the thesis and like what you're describing, which is like network digital objects, few external dependencies. And the argument with few external dependencies is the more stuff that you have to refer off of blockchain, whether that's it could be IPFS, or it could be an issuer of a securities asset, or it could be something that's linked to some off-chain, representation. These things can be valuable, unquestionably. Like they're already valuable today. We have $80 trillion of GDP flowing worldwide, or whatever. My point is, and agreeing with you, there's actually this argument to be made that things can get incredibly valuable where you don't have those dependencies, where things completely exist just on a blockchain. And it's things today that represent things like crypto art or valuable PFPs or, pieces that like really don't have or have as few of those dependencies as possible. Can get very big and create massive markets and don't actually need to link to something that is regulated off chain.
Yeah, I think that meme coins are also a good example.
Meme coins are another great example of that.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think it's a good way to think about
the total value of meme coins is going to drastically outpace the total value of real world assets over time.
It wouldn't be crazy.
it. Yeah, I actually think I might agree with that.
Like the amount of bullish that I am on meme coins, specifically right now, these dumb political meme coins, is ridiculous.
Let's talk about it. I'd love to hear your views on it.
Yeah,
and then I can jump in.
Very 60 IQ take is that this is an election year. Between now and the election, politics worldwide are only going to get more attention.
Yep.
There's, in my head, 15 to 25% shot Trump mentions the meme coins himself. Like, you can just imagine him talking about billions of dollars going into my memes because people love me.
I see
and my dick is huge. Like, it's just like, that's his type of energy. And I don't think as the election goes onward, like making bets on poly market is exciting. Like the upside of,
QX.
Yeah, it's fucking boring. The upside of buying the 17th Trump derivative or the one Joe Biden token that makes fun of him, and people buy it ironically because they don't like Joe Biden. Like, I would rather put money in that than gamble on the outcome of the election just because the upside is just so asymmetric. Not to show my bags because this is going to come out in like 2 months and they might be to zero by then. But like when the meme tokens are under 100 million market cap and you're like, oh, this is a Trump token. It has kind of a big following. There's all these holders. It's like, Ansem's cat just got to 100 million or like some bullshit just got to 100 million. And this token can't go to like 500 or a billion or I don't know, like seeing Whiff do what Whiff has done over the last 4 months is like broke my mental model on meme coins because I've completely faded Whiff. I'm like, hat comes off, fuck your hat. Like, this is stupid. I have friends buying it at like 30 cents. And I'm like, you're so stupid, dude. It was 3 cents like 2 weeks ago. And then now they're up 15x. It's over $4. They're like, this is beta to soul. I'm like, okay, I'm going to cope and like not buy Whiff, but there's going to be other things that outperform Whiff from here. What are they? And, the political ones to me feel a little safer than the flavor of the month, or the flavor of the day, influencer cat meta or founder cat meta.
Yeah, I think the point that you touch on of the prediction market stuff, because I like prediction markets. Like, shout out to Polymarket. I think it's really dope. But like, I kind of think that meme coins might just be better prediction markets in that like they kind of get to the same point. Like, I really want to see, and I don't know how you would do it, but I'm really curious about like meme coins for sports teams, meme coins for athletes. Like, what if just like everything that people cared about had a meme coin or had versions of meme coins, and there was never a like we've seen people try some of like the NFL teams. Whoever wins the Super Bowl gets paid out the bucket of the training fees for all the other ones. But like, what if you just removed all of that and you were like, what if you bought the Kansas City Chiefs meme coin?
I've thought about this. Like, what if you just had a platform that you go to and it was like a very stupid little Web3 web app, and all it had on it was 30 basketball teams, like NBA basketball teams, and it just lived there for years. Right? There's nothing to do, and on the off season, people will probably like speculate a little bit on who's going to perform well if they, got a new player in a trade. As you start ramping up into the playoffs, you start to see like, okay, people are starting to participate in these markets again. And then at the end of the season, after everything's done, maybe you'll sell off. Like, let's call it like you put on a position on the Chicago Bulls and it's 1995. It's like, do you sell that position?
Yeah.
Like, knowing that they might go for the title the next year, or do you stay in it? There's some interesting questions around how these markets persist after the event happens that I think sports teams are uniquely enabled to like serve. Elections are a little trickier. It's like, I could paint a picture where there's just a race to the exit at the end of the election in November.
Or the you're definitely selling before November.
Yeah.
Like-
Whereas with sports teams, there's a durability there that's
Yes.
actually quite interesting. That's not to say that the investment's bad.
Oh
I
no,
think
you
you're-
have to know though your time horizon
Exactly.
as an investor.
Yeah,
When
yeah,
you're
yeah.
buying a political meme coin, you're looking for like if Trump does talk about the meme coin, it's like that's the equivalent to me of like an Elon liquidity event where you just
Going
take
on
it.
SNL and mentioning Doge.
Yeah, like you just take that liquidity event
Fair
and
enough.
you'll buy a 50% dip if you want to buy it later on.
Yeah.
And if something like I've thought through, if Joe Biden wins, what happens? If Trump wins, what happens? If one of them dies, what happens?
Yeah.
In any case, they're getting the attention. Like,
Yeah.
someone's like, oh, Joe Biden, something happened. It's like, well, that would be the exit pump. Like, not to be grim.
I'm gonna have to cut that one.
Well, it's fine. Like in my head, they're like 78, 80 years old. Like most people in my family died before they got to the age that these presidents are at.
Oh my god, dude.
It's whatever. As a trader, that's what I'm thinking of. I'm like, what events could happen? How would I trade if that event happens?
Understood.
And then you got to know your exit.
I think that's smart. I think that's
But
smart.
it
for
is,
sure.
yeah. It's.
So yeah, I want to hear more of your thoughts. I guess like both just personally as far as the meme coin world,
Yeah.
and then also like I think there's a really interesting kind of meme coins versus NFTs conversation that maybe isn't a totally fair competition that people have created, but
Yeah.
that the internet definitely has created.
Yeah.
And how you're thinking about that,
God,
both as a fund and personally.
I have so many thoughts about this. I don't even know where to start, honestly, just because it's all such it's very mushy in my brain, and I think I'm still trying to untangle it all. I think on this last point around, well, let me first by saying I think there's a lot of people who are looking at these markets right now and are chasing a lot of these tokens, and I would say, having been around for a while, there's always another project. Like if you miss something or you've missed a trend or you've missed, just stay here long enough. There's going to be something next week, 2 weeks, a month from now.
2 hours.
2 hours. And so like, you have to be in this space, you have to be comfortable with missing things. This is we're looking at like a new form of like an emergent economy that's getting built. Everything is needs to get built. And so like, we're going to just see all categories start to kind of flood into this space, and there's going to be all sorts of opportunities. And so you got to be patient. You just got to be, you have to have a longer view, and you have to like not get frustrated with yourself if you don't see trends like as quickly as other people do. The second thing I'll say is like the NFT meme thing, which I think is a really interesting question. I think there's no doubt that there's a hot ball of money in this space that seems to follow trends, which is kind of like what leads to the thing that I was just describing. It's like people start to chase, right? They want make those 900% gains in 20 minutes off of the Bowden trade or whatever. And I think that will probably persist for a large part of the cycle. Like meme tokens have a lot of attention as a concept. I think players in the economy of Web3 understand that and have intuited it. And we're probably going to see a persistent bid around the category for a while, just because like it's very Lindy right now. It's like these things are creating shelling points very quickly, and people want to participate in it. It's new and it's fresh and exciting.
It's also simple.
It's simple to understand.
There's no FDV. Like there's no like, oh, we're discounting cash flow and we're looking at revenue multiples.
It's basically
just like,
relative comps. Like Doge is at 25 billion, and this
Whiff's
is
at 5.
Whiff's at 5. Guess what? We got 5x left, boys. Let's go. So it's like a very crude, simple way to like look at these markets, which I think is, I guess it's got like product market fit, right? I think the question you're actually asking is like, what does that mean for NFTs? I think so. Taking like this intra-cycle move and kind of like thinking about it more holistically, I think what will probably happen is people will realize meme tokens or AMMs for liquidity and things that are fungible are probably better suited for specific things, and NFTs are better suited for other things. And I think in a time where things are just there's a hot ball of money flying around, there's all this excitement, I think people aren't able to parse out why one is better than the other. I certainly have my feelings and assumptions. Everyone's just kind of like, oh, meme tokens. Like we gotta go after meme tokens. But I guarantee you in 6 to 12 months, people are gonna be like, wait, no, I wanna buy a piece of crypto art. Like I wanna support that artist.
That's where the gains go. It's like
I want to preserve wealth because like I know that this market is worth $2 billion and it's grown 300% a year, and like people love punks, and I think this is a durable asset, and so I feel like it's very fuzzy and messy right now. But like you can't. Yeah, I would say markets will get created for both. I'm certain of it. And I think it's certainly not the death of NFTs. And in fact, like if you believe in the asset class of like non-fungible wrappers around individual pieces of content for a variety of different reasons, it could be crypto art or game pieces or whatever, now feels like the time to be making that bet. It's so like it's such a narrative violation to like NFTs right now.
Yeah.
If you like Ethereum NFTs,
this is like the
very
moment. We are
contrary.
You
so
should just retire. Just go back to trading equities or something. Like
No, I mean right now, like because there's I mean I was just looking at the timeline this morning. There's a bunch of talk about some punks that have around 40 ETH loans, and they're going to be coming up in the next month or two, and we're already at a 40 ETH floor. And could we see a flush into the 30s? And it's like
if that happens, I'm buying some more pumps.
that's kind of the thing. It's like if that happens, who people are at least not publicly saying they're excited to buy punks at that price.
Yeah.
But there's a bunch of people who've been on the sidelines
are gonna
watching
buy
them,
punks.
and it's like we remember when they were 60 forever, and
Yeah.
we remember when they went up to 140, and they've been pretty stable. If you get the opportunity to get one in the 30s, that's the best opportunity you've had since like Q2 2021.
Yeah.
Yeah, basically from the 100 punk sweep, right? Like that was when the floor went up to like 25 or 30 or so, and then it just kind of went fucking crazy.
That one transaction.
Yeah, I remember.
I thought the
because
bot
I had
was
2
bugged.
punks sold during that.
Punk bot was going
I thought the
nuts.
bot was bugged. I'm
Yeah.
like, what's going
Yeah,
on?
I had 2 punks listed for sale that were part of that sweep.
Oh, no.
And I'm out at dinner with Ali, and I'm like, fuck, we have to go home. Like, this is crazy.
I need to buy more. I just sold.
Totally. Well, I think what you're nailing is like there is a psychological price floor that enters these collections over time.
Yeah.
And the longer that psychological price floor settles, the more durable these collections are at very specific thresholds of price. And there's not that many, right? Like there's 10,000 punks, there's 10,000 squiggles, there's 500 autoglyphs. Like I would say like 5 to 10 collections. And then there's like the very networked artists like Beeple and Xcopy and so on and so forth. That when people come into the space, they are tracking these price floors over time. And they're seeing that, like, I mean, you just look at the numbers. I'm going to do it off the top of my head, but like punks throughout the bear market were pretty much at a $1 billion collection value, right? Like total across the entire class. And now they're closer to 1.8. And like we're talking about like a liquidation cascade down to maybe like 1.4, 1.5. It's like these things are actually pretty like meaningless, honestly, if you look at like the collection value as it stands and has gained over time. My view is if you believe that blockchains are going to eat the world's categories of value, and that these things have price thresholds that they've met, and the fact that there's like very limited amount of them, right? Like we're talking about 25,000 units or whatever in the aggregate, very few amount of like objects. These things are actually going to be massively like valuable in the future, right? As like categorical stores of value on Ethereum. So I continue to be very bullish on NFTs. I also have a much longer view on the category than I think most people. And I'll say that if you believe that 25,000 objects can be valuable, if you can like get to that point, then 1 million objects can be valuable, right? So
Yeah.
I'm bullish on the category, but I also will say meme tokens are interesting, and I think they're going to find valuable products and services that get built around them over time.
Yeah.
Just given their fluidity and ease of being able to kind of move in and out of these positions.
No, I agree. And I think like as you said about like the longer time horizon, I think people have a really hard time, and it's something that I still struggle with, of like disassociating that you can have long-term beliefs of what is true in crypto, and just because like the current flavor of the month thing that everyone's talking about on crypto Twitter isn't that,
Totally.
doesn't mean that your thesis was wrong.
Yeah.
And that like most of the conversation that is driven on social media about like inside of crypto Twitter is driven by like day traders and like swing
100%.
traders and people who are
Yeah.
talking about very low time frames.
Yeah.
And I think it's really easy to get caught up in that and be like, oh, I'm personally long Solana, but Keyboard Monkey just opened a short. Should I be selling all of my Solana
Keyboard
right
monkey.
now?
15-minute time preference.
Yeah, and like, it's there's no like, hey, just so you know, I'm talking about this thing being bearish for the next like 4 hours.
There's no
not
context
4 years.
associated with like these
yeah.
moves often, which is a great point. I'll also just say, while I philosophically love the idea of meme tokens, there's a couple of things I'll say. Which the first is, I have about over 100 portfolio companies that are working on all sorts of different things. Right? Some are working on AI, some are working on gaming, some are working on social, some are working on infra. Some are doing like threshold cryptography for access control. It's like, things that are important pieces of like the plumbing of the space. And because they don't fit into that meme token bucket, which is like the narrative of crypto Twitter for this cycle, it can be very frustrating as a builder. It's like, why am I fucking putting in all this time when like, you know, Bowden is up 900%? Like as a builder, it can be frustrating. It can be irritating. It could be disheartening to know that the space is moving in a direction distracting, because then you're like, should I be doing this? So like, I think maybe an overarching comment I want to say is like, it is not emblematic or symbolic of our space writ large. It is just a thing that people are excited about.
Yeah.
And I think that's totally fair and awesome. I think the other thing I'll say is, I think there's an argument to be made that like in 6 months, we're going to look back at some of these meme tokens and be like, yo, that's corny. Like that is like not an inch. Why were we doing that with the hat thing on the dog? Like what?
Every hat.
Exactly. And like, but I also will say there's going to be a category of meme tokens that I think will persist, just like Doge has.
Yeah.
For, you know, it's a tale as old as time. Like there is real value in the category that Doge has proven out, and we may see some winners emerge alongside.
Yeah. So one thing we haven't spoken about yet, but I feel like is kind of related to this, is the crypto social world. What have you been like excited about taking part in the social world? So I feel like that's probably, of all those categories, the one that is closest coupled to meme coins, and that meme coins are such a social thing where it's, you know, what's trending on Twitter, what's in Telegram chats, all these different things.
Yeah, crypto social is a crazy one. What I'll say first is, and then I'll get into kind of some of the ones that are more public. I backed a very cool founder who's been building a crypto social product for the last year. Before kind of the Farcaster and the Lens and the stuff kind of blew up. And I'm really excited about it. And it's coming out later this year, and I'm excited for people to play around with it. But it's a category that I feel like 2 years ago I got really excited about, because the tech was in place to support like real crypto social products from emerging. I think Gallery was like, I would call it maybe the first crypto social product I did, which was about curating your work in a social network, and they're now starting to layer social features. But I think what we've seen is that there's actually this desire to replicate some of the functionality of things like Twitter and Discord in more crypto-enabled environments. And you can actually unlock a lot of product and service value when you're sitting at that layer of the stack and your Web3 wallet is integrated, and you can create frames that allow you to kind of like use your Web3 auth to do on-chain actions like very quickly with a click of a button. Proving it out. Like I think we're there. So I would say like I faded. So I was also an early Farcaster ID user. I emailed Dan or messaged Dan maybe about a year and a half ago, or I can't even remember the timeline now, and got a bunch of my team on there, and we were messing around, and it was cool. Like I liked it. I would say at the time when I played around with it, it very much felt like it was trying to replicate Twitter's feature set without any meaningful upgrade in terms of like crypto or Web3 usability. And I was like, the switching costs are too high. Like, I don't know if people are going to want to bring their network over to Farcaster. I still feel like it's a struggle to do it as a Farcaster Twitter or a Farcaster poster and a Twitter poster. It's like, why am I bifurcating like my network in this way? I'm still trying to figure that out in my own head. But at the time, it was even worse. The thing that changed for me was Farcaster frames. And I was like, okay, they nailed it. This is fucking awesome. Developers can build all sorts of cool stuff here. I can actually now start like integrating the things that I am and own and do in Web3 natively through this web app. Like this is a really clever way to start bootstrapping all sorts of like new products and services right at the UI layer of like a social product. So I'm really excited about that design space, and Farcaster I think is really nailing it right now. Lens I'm less familiar with, but I know they're continuing to build and ship and do stuff. But my thesis is that like these products are actually going to become pretty meaningful parts of our lives soon. And you know, if the switching costs are starting to like get a little lower, like
when you get paid in degen,
People are seeing 3 rounds of degen stimulus, and they're like, why have I not used this app?
Totally. I think Twitter is putting up a nice fight with like the creator payments and stuff. Like it's fun to see people making $5,000 or $10,000 a month. But
I got like $1,300 last week. I was shocked.
There you go. So it's nice. They're starting to kind of like lean into like what it means to actually reward the people that are providing the service value on these platforms. I will just say crypto is like no match for that. It's like that on steroids. So I can see an argument where like there could be this great flood just given the virtue of like crypto and its craziness and like the incentives of products and services and tokens and meme coins and NFTs and all of these things on this other shiny new land. People just like start flooding over.
Have you I agree on the frame stuff. We were actually talking about that with someone recently.
We're talking to Chikai about using frames.
About how cool frames were.
And
And have you
people.
had anyone, any like founders you've talked to yet who are building frame only apps? Like I feel like we're getting close to a point where we're gonna see like $1 billion like application that doesn't have a website and it has like a Farcaster profile and a frame.
The founder, so I have a bunch of founders who have built frame stuff and are starting to really lean in heavily into frames. I would say the founder in my portfolio that I would say is the most bullish on frames and Farcaster, and is probably the one who I would probably peg as being someone who just drops Farcaster products in the future, is G Money from 90cc. Yeah. He is so ridiculously pilled on Farcaster. I just talked to him for a few minutes. He loves it, loves the format, loves the network, loves interacting natively with crypto people, loves building frames and like allowing people to kind of interact with 90cc and build out that network through frames. If I had to guess, I would say, and I haven't confirmed this with him, but like he's probably the closest to like really leaning into that design format and no other. He loves it.
Yeah. I think that we're gonna, as that social world evolves, it's gonna kind of turn into a thing where it's like, why make a full website when you can just have a frame?
Yeah, I think there's
there's some work going on.
Oh, it's all good. I think there's definitely I would say that there's a probability that that's true.
With the frames in particular, I've been trying to like show artists what they're able to do with this.
Yeah.
Because we were at a dinner last night. I pulled out my phone and I was just like showing like, this is how easy it is to mint. You click mint, and if you have warps, it just goes. And you don't need to connect your wallet. You don't need to open up Rainbow. And I'm trying to tell people like, if you're gonna do an edition or something, like definitely think about doing it on Farcaster, because I think the what's the right word? Like the users are so prone to engage. Like they want to engage with the frames. They want to share it. And like you don't see that as much on Twitter right now. Twitter kind of like punishes you when you share things with links. Farcaster doesn't.
Yeah. And
it's just I think like 20% of the people I talk to realize what Farcaster can do right now, maybe less than 20%. So it still feels like there's this a big like educational gap of, I know it exists, but it's like Twitter on crypto, I don't know.
Yeah.
And like they don't fully understand like, well, here's the unique things it affords.
People love benefits. People love knowing that they can access a new type of benefit here that they can't access there. And I think to your point, those benefits are now slowly starting to become obvious, but it feels like something that's going to be trickle flood until it just becomes like, dude, these benefits are important. Just go here and stay here, and people will.
Yeah, for me, I started liking the channels a lot, like the subreddits. Yeah. So like I'll go in, check the art channel, check the crypto art channel, check the We Do a Little channel, check Reply Guys, check like a couple of the meme ones.
Yeah.
Like Degen, we're so early. What
do you guys think that like there will be a dilution of quality as more people enter these channels, and as maybe more crypto curious but not crypto native people enter these channels?
We've already seen the dilution, I would say, as Degen has ripped over $1 billion market cap. There's been like, I think, a big dilution of people who are going to Farcaster with their primary goal being extracting value. And you can kind of tell in the way they interact, whether it is like follow for follow, tip for tip. Like it feels like
just
using like
GM to every post.
Yeah, it feels like MySpace back when you're in middle school and you joined it, and people were just like,
people are either trying to extract value or trying to participate in an airdrop, and so it just feels like
I would say they're I don't know how their algorithm works for trending, but the trending tab in the channels seems to be the best for me. Like on the bigger channels where it's like 50,000 plus people, like I'll only look at the trending.
Yeah.
Because it seems to pull the ones that have the most engagement, that are higher signal. Whereas like the trough or like the most, chronological from newest to oldest, that can just be a shit show.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think we've noticed some of that dilution. I think it'll ebb and flow. Like the airdrops are just gonna get smaller and smaller over time.
Yeah.
Because they have less to distribute and people know the game now. So I think like after the next airdrop, maybe people's expectations might be too high, and then they'll get the airdrop, and then it'll be lower, and then maybe it'll even out. I kind of want to ask about Glitch Marfa. We haven't talked about that.
Let's do it. This is like one of my favorite things on planet Earth.
Yeah. So how did Glitch Marfa come about? Or for the people who don't know, what is Glitch Marfa?
Yeah. So Glitch Marfa is a digital art, crypto art gallery in Marfa, Texas.
Yes.
And so I led the seed round for Art Blocks. So this was back in the end of 2020. This is actually where you and I met. I was in the Art Blocks Discord in November of 2020, I want to say.
Good banter.
And like there was maybe like 10 of us that were minting squiggles and talking about squiggles and breaking them down. And I just fell in love with Art Blocks and generative art and procedural work, and like using blockchains as a part of like the design constraint of making work was just so it's like mind expanding. And I pinged Snowfro and I was like, dude, I am obsessed. I love this. I love what you're doing. Like, how can I get involved? And so we ended up putting a very tiny little seed round together. Like it was Collab Currency and like a couple DAOs and like some angel investors. I would say the headquarters for Art Blocks at the time was Marfa, Texas. And I was like, what the fuck is Marfa, Texas? Like, what is
Never
this?
been there.
Never been there. Didn't know very much about it. And Eric, so this may have been like January or February of 2021, started to pill me on Marfa. And, it as a very historic place. There's a very famous artist named Donald Judd, who's like an object-based design, very clean lines, geometry, very reductive, minimalist, and he made Marfa basically his playground for making like these giant sculptures, these works. He had a huge factory out there. He's just kind of like a brilliant mind who migrated from New York to Marfa and just like made it his place and drove a bunch of like artistic and creative talent with him. Right, so a bunch of people ended up coming to Marfa, spending time making work there. And Marfa, just to take a step back, was like kind of an old army base. This was, like in the 30s and 40s. And it's basically a very remote town in the middle of nowhere, Texas.
Yes.
It's 3 hours from the nearest airport, which is El Paso, 6.5 hours from Austin, Texas. To get there, you can fly like a private chartered plane, but 99.9% of people that get there because of driving from like a very distant location. The town's about 1,500 people week wide, but then on the weekends it kind of expands to a lot of people who are coming to visit. And it's basically just an art town. It's an art town. It's creative, very creative class. There's like a Michelin star quality restaurant in town.
The food in Marfa blew my mind. Like, it was some of the best food. Every place we ate at, there was a place they were making like homemade Italian sandwiches
100%.
and gelato.
Yeah.
There was a place where I had a tremendously good steak, got good Mexican food. It was like everywhere I went was good.
It's like it's hard for me to explain because I want to say it's like a small town, it's an art town, there's just a bunch of artists around. But at the same time, a lot of investment has been made into Marfa to support like amazing quality stuff. And that stuff could be food, it could be architecture, it could be homes, it could be, Beyonce, Jack Dorsey, Rick Rubin, they all have homes in Marfa. Like just
I didn't know that.
Yeah, just to like set the stage there. It's like a philosophical and spiritual retreat for many creative members of industry. And so anyway, I'm getting way ahead of myself. Long story short, he pilled me, and later that year, he ended up having like the first ever Art Blocks gathering. I don't know if you were there.
I came to the second one.
You came to the
so I
second
missed
one.
the first one.
Yeah, like the first ever Art Blocks gathering in Marfa, and I went out there with the Flamingo DAO crew, me and my business partner Steve. We rented a house in Marfa. There's like 15 of us Flamingo DAO members, and we spent the weekend in Marfa. And me and Steve were like, God damn it, we love this fucking place. We gotta buy a property here. And so we started looking around. I asked Eric if he knew of any properties. He's like, you should look at this one. Like this property was owned by a New York lawyer who bought the property 10 years ago, put in this commercial kitchen in the middle, made it an art gallery in the front, has a residence in the back, and it's just sitting there. It's like, I think he wants to unload it. So I was like, okay, cool, put me in touch with your realtor or whatever so I can like look at it. I looked at it, I fell in love. I was like, Steve, this is the property we should buy. We bought it, and first order of business was like, dude, let's start a digital art gallery. And so Madison was brought on as the gallery director. I'm pretty hands-on with the day-to-day, and we ended up hiring Malta, who has worked at Bright Moments, has worked with Tribute Labs, has worked with a number of folks to basically accent the front side of Glitch. So the back side was converted into a restaurant. Steve runs that, and then I run the gallery in front. And long story short, we built a product called Every 30 Days, where we feature a new crypto artist and their work, and we're essentially trying to tell the story of how crypto art emerged and became important. And so we kicked off the series with Xcopy, and we've featured Larva Labs and Snowfro and Terraforms and Math Castles and Claire Silver and Rupe Reinisto and Kim Asendorf and Emily Shea and the last one we actually just finished was Vera Molnar,
nice.
Who's like the godmother of generative art. And we run these exhibitions every 3 days. We work with the artists, we work with the collectors of their pieces to put on these IRL exhibitions, and then also to make them live streamed and digitally available to anyone that wants to consume the exhibition from their couch. And
necessary for when it's in Marfa.
Exactly, necessary for when it's in Marfa. And we have a giant canvas screen in the front showing the object of the month, so you can actually go and enjoy the work and the whole exhibition inside of the gallery throughout the month. And then we made these posters available. So there's only 1,000 posters to support the exhibition every month. And we announced actually last week that that every 30 days as a concept was ending. It's the end of our first season, and we've got some very exciting things that is no longer every 30 days, starting in on May 1st.
Nice.
Yeah.
So are you in Marfa every month?
No, so we ended up hiring somebody to staff the gallery.
It's a trek every month.
It is, but Madison and myself will probably be out there about 5 or 6 times this year.
And you mentioned Tribute Labs and Flamingo DAO.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that a little bit, because you were obviously early to that stuff. And did Collab invest in Tribute Labs as well? Or
We did invest. So we invested in Tribute Labs, and then I'm a personal member of, I think, a handful of DAOs, including Flamingo DAO. And then Collab Currency also took seats in a number of other of the investment DAOs.
Yeah.
So I'd say we probably have exposure either personally or through the fund. So think about 11 of the DAOs, and then also we're investors in Tribute Labs.
And what was it about Flamingo DAO and like that kind of model that got you excited or got you interested in it? Because I guess one thing that I always find interesting about those is if you have the money of a fund, you could kind of do it yourself. And so what made you excited about Collab going into these?
Yeah.
And how do you think about that?
So it's a great question. Flamingo DAO was done personally before I think I had refined a thesis on why an investment DAO could also be an investment. So like things like, so at the time in early 2020, when I became like a founding member of Flamingo, NFTs were still weird, right? Like this is back when Xcopy work was trading for like 5 ETH and 10 ETH, and squiggles were $35, and punks were still
the good old days.
Punks were still under an ETH, right? So it's like, I believe that some of these things could be valuable, but the extent of them as investment objects was still pretty opaque, honestly. And so like it didn't make sense for the fund to invest.
Too risky or too unknown.
It was just, we have like a very specific strategy we have to talk to our LPs about. And so like, it wasn't outside. I mean, we were doing it personally with our own money, but it was one of those things where it's like, I don't know if like we can make this.
I get that. Because sometimes it's like, you just got to trust me, the vibes are right. And that's not
Which is not great.
You can't write that to the LPs, whereas you could throw your own money in. Like if at the same time, when I was like aping all of my net worth into NBA Top Shot, if I had been running a fund and be like, guys, basketball's sick.
So I remember you
Basketball's sick.
I think I still have like a top 100 NBA Top Shot account. I haven't logged in. I barely sold anything. But
Chat.
I have, I remember you were on, was it like a New York Times article?
Wall Street Journal.
At one point, a Wall Street Journal. I remember how funny that was.
With the cats.
It was
He's holding the cats.
Oh, was that the cat? You were
It's the other one.
Oh my God, so amazing. NBA Top Shot was a whole nother journey.
But sorry, I interrupted you. All right, so Flamingo DAO, so you go into that personally.
Yeah.
And what was it like in those super early days? Was there like a very clear kind of goal of like, we're going to just buy like a fuck ton of punks? And
the punks and the squiggles thesis kind of came together at the same time. Punks was a lot of us were already in that Discord.
So wait, so you said early 2020, did you mean early 2021?
No, so the Flamingo DAO was founded in mid 2020.
Okay.
And Top Shot was like later that summer, I want to say.
And then Squiggles.
So we were collecting, and Squiggles launched on the end of November of 2020. And so we were buying, I think we put on a really big punks position. I want to say it was December. It may have been towards the end of November.
That's the best time to buy. It was a lull in the market. It was before
Yeah.
NFTX came out.
It was-
Punks went under 3 ETH.
Punks were under 3 ETH.
Yes.
I remember that for sure because we ended up putting on a pretty sizable position around 2 to 3 ETH on
Yeah.
Punks.
Probably put the bottom in.
Yeah, and then Squiggles was around the same time. I mean, like I minted a lot of Squiggles, and like I starting to form this thesis around like generative and networked objects, and Punks fit it. I thought Squiggles actually supercharged it in many ways. Just like these things were on demand, they were being minted randomly and probabilistically in a way that Punks weren't. It was like kind of it was taking generative art to its logical conclusion, which is like bringing randomness and probability to the point of mint, which is like if you're an artist, that's a brand new design space to operate in. It's not like you can curate and pick and choose what the traits are that are going on this punk painstakingly to create a collection. It's like, no, your art craft is actually in the algorithm to support probabilities, which is like mind expanding. And so we started talking about, I think around this time, these larger set collections being like, very collectible in many ways. And that's when a lot of those punks and squiggles and glyphs and we were also collecting Top Shot and a number of stuff started to come into focus.
Nice. Very cool.
And then you guys got the purple cap alien.
We did.
A couple months later.
Yeah, we did.
That kind of set off a full
yeah.
frenzy because that was
I think
the first...
G bought his ape right before that. I want to say.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe end of January, and then the alien came very shortly after.
Seth S's alien, right? I think he had like 3.
Yeah.
He came back, sold that, and it was like, whoa! I've never seen an alien move before. And then it was just like
We saw 2 move in the last 30 days now.
I know.
Yeah.
And then
This is the other thing I'll say, and sorry I didn't mean to interrupt,
No,
but
you're
like,
good.
dude, we just saw 2 punks sell for what, $15 to $17 million.
A piece.
It's like the concept of NFTs is like not going anywhere. It's and the hilarious thing is very few people are talking about that. So we just saw 2 objects that are NFTs sell for like $16 million a piece. Like let that sink in.
do we know the buyers on either of these? Do you?
I've heard names and I haven't confirmed them, so I don't even want to say
that's
them.
where I'm at too.
I do know that they were legitimate sales.
Oh,
And
I know they're legitimate because we know the sellers.
I know the sellers.
We know
Yeah.
the sellers. They want to fake it.
Yeah. And also like the glyph set sold for $15 million. So
Yes.
it's like real value is moving
We know
in
the
these
buyer
markets.
of that one.
Yeah.
Was that Canvas or
No, it was
Howard?
Howard, yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
I can't say anything, but yeah, I'll let you
well,
guys.
we'll speculate.
I'm very confident that it was him, but I might be wrong.
He was doing the Lord's work in August 2021 for our bags.
Oh man,
Specifically
what a
some
guy.
of those ringers. Like, whew. All right, where do we go from there?
All right, so you join Flamingo DAO.
Yeah.
You guys buy a bunch of punks.
Yep.
You buy squiggles. You do the art blocks seed round, and then you have art blocks insanity. That's
Yeah.
summer 2021.
Yeah.
What was that like? How was that time for you? Like, were you are obviously at this point were already invested in art blocks?
Yeah.
Like, are you spending I have to imagine a shit ton of time helping them kind of manage the chaos that was going on?
Yeah.
Like, what was that time like for you?
So you'll have a few projects every cycle that are just like part of the moment, right? And typically, so I'm pretty hands-on as an investor. Most of my days are 12-hour days, and I'm on calls back to back with founders. My Telegram is just like I wake up in the morning, it's just founder questions. It's a lot, right? But I would say you have to carve out extra time for the founders whose projects are just like totally exploding. And like Art Blocks in 2021 was like having a moment. And so I don't know if you guys remember this, but like there was real things breaking with Art Blocks constantly, and not in things that they couldn't really control. It was things like botters were coming in. They were these prices would skyrocket from like the mint out price of an ETH all the way up to like 10 ETH in seconds, right? There was real economic value flowing through the system, and like it brought in a lot of actors that I think were, just trying to make a buck. Meanwhile, there's, people are like, you should move to a Dutch auction, or you should whitelist people. You should, take XYZ steps to do this. You should build your own secondary market. You should, and like, I think like 60, 70,000 people entered that economy and were participating, and it was just a lot of noise. And so, I remember spending a lot of time with Eric, just like weeding through these comments and figuring out like what actually has leverage, like what is actually going to move the needle, what is just being knee jerky or responsive. And I think honestly, I'll give a lot of credit to him and his team. They did an amazing job navigating the stress and craziness of like that 6 to 9 month period, and have built a more robust and stronger product as a result. And they've also got a bunch of stuff that they're going to be announcing in the next couple of months. They've been very busy during the bear market, quiet, but very busy. But I would say, like, to your actual question, it was just a fucking madhouse. Like, there was articles that were showing up in the Times and the Journal and, CNN, and people were some of the art blocks pieces were selling for millions of dollars. One sold for $6 million, a bunch sold for $4 million, a bunch sold for between 2 and 3. The goose. So it's like, yeah, it was just a crazy time, man.
Yeah.
And like a lot was happening, and I just give a lot of credit to Eric and his team for just like navigating that.
How do you balance during a time like that, your personal portfolio, managing that versus the fund versus like being in DAOs? Because on a personal, like, I'm not running a fund, but I am running my own portfolio, and then I am in DAOs where it's significantly harder to sell and exit, and there's more friction. Like, how do you look at balancing them? Because in that summer, you're kind of forced to sell some stuff. Like, when you're paying $30, $40 for a squiggle, and 6 months later it's worth 30,000, it's like, you gotta take some profit.
Yeah, so I'll first off say my personal portfolio, my PA, is very vanilla. It's like things that I have long-term conviction on for the most part, and it's also like experiments that I'm trying, because like you gotta stay flexible and like play with stuff. I'm not really moving in and out of positions in my PA. It's really just like long only, and it's things like NFTs, and it's things like base layers, and it's maybe it's not very many things, honestly.
Comfy blue chips that you don't need to worry about.
No, it's just like things that are, it's just like stuff that I'm confident is going to perform over like the long run.
You go into a coma for 3 years and wake up.
I'd be happy waking up in a coma after 3 years.
Yes.
Like for a good chunk of that portfolio. So to answer your question, it's not really a thing that I'm not like moving in and out of positions often. I don't really do a PA, and honestly, it would be a disservice to my LPs if I was doing that.
You're not farming blast gold right now?
Oh, well,
just a little bit.
I actually think I might be like, I'm playing around with Blast right now. I'm playing around with a lot of stuff, honestly. But
that's the other side of it, is experimenting.
Yeah. It's a very what I will say, it's like these numbers are not big, right? Yes. They're like very tiny. But I do play around with stuff. I think that's important. I would say, so 95% of my time is spent on Collab. And it's also just like what I wish I had more time to tweet and like do stuff and like, be in the Discords. Like it's a lot of fun, dude, to like hang out in Discords with you and like do things.
But nothing is like 2021 though.
Nothing.
Like
the vibes will never be back. But like but it is a lot of fun to do that. I just don't have the time in the same way as I did then. And so 90% of my time is really on just like fun stuff. It's fund management. It's fund positions. It's portfolio support. It's new positions and diligence. And so, yeah, I would just say like that's typically where I spend most of my time. And then DAOs, I feel like are in support of that in many ways. Like DAOs the tribute DAOs in particular have been pretty good about like surfacing insights and good conversations. And at least, I'm also doing emails like while I'm on those calls.
Of course.
People are, and I'm trying to get through the slog of telegrams. But like I'm listening and like chiming in when it's important. I would say I'm most active on Flamingo.
Yeah.
Just because like I feel like that's one of my babies, and like a bunch of us kind of came into the space together. But for the most part, I would say the DAOs I feel like are very like in support of the work I do at Collab.
And then I guess like kind of on top of all that stuff and how hard it is to have time, you over that period of time as well I feel like you really made a solid name for yourself as far as like the podcasting with Kevin and doing all this stuff. How did you like meet Kevin and get into like what were the steps from, hey, cool, I like art as well, to like, you should come on the podcast, to you should do this regularly and like be a part of what we're doing? Like, what was that process like?
Yeah. So Kevin's in Flamingo. So we met there originally. He also ended up investing in Art Blocks out of True Ventures. So him and his business partner invested, the whole fund of True Ventures invested in Art Blocks. And he ended up going to an Art Blocks event, and we just started spending more time like in IRL together. he asked me to come on his podcast as a guest in I want to say it was like mid 2021. The times are
Yeah, MoFi,
Life is a blur.
right?
yeah. I can't even remember the timeline. It may have been early 2022. It may have been late 2021, but it was sometime around there. It was like towards the end of the bull and like the bear was starting to set in. And I went on and like the episode was very well received. I think a lot of people enjoyed the format and the dialogue. And so after that episode, I think he, I'm pretty vocal on Flamingo, and I think he likes the insights and was like, I'm spinning up a new format with a co-host. Do you want to do it? And I was like, yeah, let's give it a try. And people really liked it. And I joined as his co-host. I liked what he was doing on the proof side. So I don't know were you guys early proof members, but like it was
Our friend was super early.
Yeah. So the COO of Fractional, he was like a longtime Kevin Rose fan.
Yeah.
And so he was like, he minted multiple and was like so big on it.
Yeah.
And I think I was kind of like I was the more skeptical one of the two
Yeah.
of us, where I was like, I don't know, I don't really get it.
I mean, the format was like, it was an ETH to mint a membership pass. And when you got in there, it was like he had curated it he had done an amazing job.
It's a good group of people.
Amazing artists, amazing collectors. Like there was a moment in time where like a lot of the stuff happening in like that proof Discord was like probably the most interesting conversations happening around crypto art. It was the Punks Discord, it was Art Blocks Discord, and then I would say the proof Discord that I thought were doing a great job of just like surfacing really great insights and really great collectors and artists together to like talk through stuff, which was awesome. So I would say like it kind of happened organically. And then Collab ended up investing in proof before the Moonbirds launch. And the rest is.
Yeah, I won't make you get
Moonbirds
too
launch
much
was
into
fun.
the most recent couple of years, last year.
That's when I got into proof, was the Moonbirds launch, because I was like, these are gonna rip.
Yeah.
These are two.
I also bought the top on Moonbirds. I bought a Moonbird for like 24 ETH once.
Oh, you didn't buy the top. They went to 40.
Top, but yeah,
I think I may have bought a Moonbird around there too. Yeah.
It was one of those things where I knew this was gonna be hot for a little bit, so I like buy 4 or 5, and then as they go up, trade them, and it was a fun couple of weeks. And then the whole Ryan Carson thing was a little weird, and then I was like, I gotta get out of here. And then I held one because there was this idea that like maybe the nest is gonna be sick. And then I held it till I got the infinite object, and I was like, okay, I'm chilling. I gotta get rid of this. But
yeah, I'll just say, the first thing I'll say is like I like Kevin. Like I think he's I know he has a bad rep in like the crypto space. He's actually a very nice guy, and he's very sharp. Like he's if you've listened to his show for decades,
I used to love Modern Finance. Like he's 2021 DC investor.
Yes, there's a side of him that isn't really getting surfaced. I think his communication style is not really well suited for crypto Twitter. We can all agree on that. Kevin is a really great guy. He's got a really great family. I think he's nice and kind and intelligent in the time I've spent with him. I think he's definitely made some fumbles.
We all do.
I think everyone can probably agree on that.
Most among us.
Yeah, we all have. I think some more publicly than others.
And this space is very unforgiving.
It is not very
This space
forgiving.
is brutal.
Yeah.
And especially for project founder. It's different if you're a speculator. It's different if you're an investor for a fund. When you are the lightning rod for every issue in one community, it's a lot.
It can also be brutal, and honestly, it can take your confidence away from wanting to make moves. And honestly, this space is about being confident in uncertain directions. And if you lose that confidence, and I'm not saying anything about anyone at this point, this is more just a holistic comment. If you lose that confidence to build in public and take risks and do interesting things, it's going to be hard for you to provide value in this space. So
Yeah, totally.
when you're talking to up and coming founders and companies you're investing in, are there like any reoccurring themes or advice that you give them to kind of deal with that? Because it feels like a different space where they are more public. They are those figureheads.
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. And I'm like chuckling to myself because so much of what I do early stage with founders is, of course, like I'm helping with product and back office stuff and just like the normal dirty work of like what it means to run a business. But there's also like a small part of it that's like a psychologist.
Yeah.
And I don't want to like
No.
cheapen the role of a psychologist because they provide a valuable service that I will never be able to provide. But like I do act as a sounding board for things like this, like what it means to build in public and like how to think about it or how to message in a way that's in the authenticity to who they are and not trying to be someone different. And honestly, this is a pretty, dude, you've been building in this space for a long time. So like, I'm not even we can probably get into all sorts of war stories with you, but like,
it's tough.
It's hard to build in this space. It is public. Everything's transparent. It involves money. Things break constantly. It's all new. We're entering like a very foreign territory, which is why I think I'm so forgiving when founders make mistakes. It's like, dude, this shit is fucking hard. And you got to have some like grace for people who are taking a risk or putting themselves out there, even if they fail miserably in front of everybody. And so I think the thing that I relate to most founders is just like, bring problems to me sooner rather than later. Let's talk about things like this is a hard environment. It's very harsh. It's like Dune style living conditions to like build stuff in this like barren wasteland of opportunity.
Very political.
Yeah. So
are there any particular kind of like skill sets or things from like that a founder has done in the past or that they're interested in that is kind of like something that you look for in founders?
Yeah. Every founder is different. So like a heuristic that I like really work with my team on is right team, right time, right problem. It's like you can kind of reduce the complexity of an investment decision into those three categories. What does those things mean is different, but like the right founder, to your question, might have domain expertise in the thing that you're trying to build. They may be like very technical and the problem set is a very technical problem. They may be very vocal and the problem is like an attention problem. They may have built products before that are adjacent, but it shows that they're a good founder and like they know how to see something from start to finish. There's a lot of things that go into like the genetic makeup of like the right founding team. So the thing that I look for is just like a very narrow scope between the founder and the thing that needs to get built. And then time, we talked about RWAs, like there's a right time to build products, and then there's like kind of maybe a too early time to build products. It's not saying that product won't exist on some time frame, but like the venture style opportunity may be 4 years away, which is true for RWAs in 2018.
Yeah. Well, I think that in a lot of ways, like fractional was just too early, where it had its moment in the sun, but most of that was just like speculation on the asset class for a few months, and then like there just aren't that many people who are active crypto participants who want to buy $100 worth.
Fractional is a great. I remember you and I jumped on a call to talk about fractional very early on, and I was geeking out. I was like, dude, I get it. Like this is. I think we all had assumptions on like fractionalization of NFTs that I still hold true. Like it's gonna be a thing.
Oh yeah, that was the hardest part about turning the company down. It's like I know that this will happen at some
100%.
point, but we were just like 5 years too early.
Exactly. It's like pets.com trying to ship pet food in 2001, just too early. Now a shitload of pet food travels across state lines, getting shipped to people's homes. 20 years later on Amazon.
Right time is so important. The educational barriers behind trying to explain how fractional worked. Like when I joined the team, my idea was our average user is going to be someone who is probably DeFi native who wants exposure to partial NFTs.
Yeah.
And what our average user really was somebody who just got on board NFTs, wanted a piece of a high-end thing and had zero idea what Uniswap was, zero idea what a liquidity pool was.
Like $500 to their name.
And they were like spending $100 on gas to buy $50 of a token, and they didn't realize how they lost money. And it was just like, whoa, our assumption on who our target audience was not what I thought it was when we launched. And
you can also paint a picture where like some of those concerns you just messaged are like are now more solved now with layer 2s and wallet abstracted and like we're getting to a place where like a product like fractional actually could thrive, and it was just a little bit too early.
A part of me thinks that give it a few more years,
run it back.
I still own fractional, so we had fractional.art, and at a certain point I actually bought the domain fractional.xyz.
Oh, interesting.
And so I still own it. And a part of me is always like,
I'm running this back, Turbo.
Out of respect to all of our investors when we shut down the company, I was like, I would never do it anytime soon.
Yeah.
But there's a world where like 4 years from now, if someone hasn't done it and it's done well, I can see myself being like, let's run it back. Let's see how it goes.
Really
there's
funny.
A world where like, I don't know, using things like Friend Tech or District 1 where you feel these abstractions where you're just clicking buy and sell and you're not really like thinking about the underlying mechanic of what you're using to buy and sell. It's like if we get there, it feels way more accessible because there was the demand for it, but the educational burden was just like, I'd wake up every day and get in Discord, and it's probably like like when you're in Telegram, and you're just like, fuck. Like you're like, I need to rank order this by importance and time sensitivity first.
Yes.
And then I need to pick which group of people I might not have time to answer to because time is finite. And then that's how you start the day.
It's a lot, man.
So
I don't miss it.
Yeah.
Speaking of the fractional stuff, have you experimented at all or looked into the like 404 NFT stuff? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah. So funny enough, when I started doing the recurring podcast series with Kevin, one of the first products I talked about was this product called Verse. And what Verse was doing was essentially pairing the concept of non-fungible NFTs that could get emitted out of essentially a bonding curve that you could speculate on.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Do you remember Verse? Yeah. And so the benefits of Verse almost predated
that's Kieran's project.
It was Kieran's project. Yeah, exactly. And I like had minted my own NFT. It's like the only NFT I think I've ever minted directly through Verse. There's like, I think, anyway, it's very invaluable. Don't go buy it. But like, I was talking about
historic.
I'm showing Leonidas this.
No, please don't. And like, I was basically walking through like the benefits of what you could get with a system that actually provided a very integrated experience between non-fungible objects and fungible curves. And I'm excited about that concept. I would say 404 seems to have like found the right messaging and the right market to like bring that to bear. And I honestly have spent very little time outside of just like briefly going through their docs and like their Twitter and just like seeing some of the early use cases. But I think it's cool, and I think it meets a need that I think exists.
Yeah, I think because I mean, obviously I spent way too much fucking time thinking about all this stuff.
Yeah.
But like what I find interesting about it is, I think it like one of the challenges with like NFTX or any of the pooled NFT things is like getting that liquidity to have it actually be meaningful.
Yeah.
And so I think like kind of solving the chicken or the egg, like cold start issue, and just being like, what if we took all the NFTs and put them into this pool? And then as you buy out of the pool, you get minted NFTs. Like, I think that in and of itself, like, is a pretty interesting model. I actually I'm really interested in it for generative art.
Yeah.
Where you like have those mints actually generate the things once you pull it out of the pool, and like up until that point, you don't know what you have.
Yeah.
And like, I think there's stuff that you can eventually do there that will be pretty cool and does kind of like solve some of the liquidity challenges that different protocols people were making.
So I totally agree with you. The one thing I will say is I look to the artists to show the world how they want to use these constraints.
Yeah.
And so like I've had so many conversations with artists in the past being like, you should look at this mechanism. Like, it's cool. And they're like, it's not my creative practice to like go down that. And so I totally agree with you. It actually does elegantly solve a lot of problems. But I also say that constraint is just not interesting to a lot of creators.
I think it has to be very specific. Like, and I think that like in and of itself is how a lot of this works. And the same thing with fractionalized and stuff where I was like, I just don't want my work fractionalized. And I was like, all right, fair enough. If someone does it, I can't stop them. But I won't like try to find a piece of your work to fractionalize. But like you have to kind of go into it. I almost think the 404 stuff works better for like PFPs and community style stuff.
I think that's right.
Where you kind of go into it with the understanding of what you're doing and saying like, this is how we're going to make a more liquid thing. It also preserves royalties really nicely because, in the same way that you could put a 5/5 buy sell tax on a meme coin, you could put that into...
It's programmatic to the system. Yeah.
And so I think it like can solve some interesting challenges there.
It's cool.
I'm curious to see. I feel like we're still in the very early stages of what it looks like and how it influences like NFTs and digital collectibles. But I think we'll see some cool stuff come out of it.
I haven't messed with the 404s myself. I looked at it. It looked like most of the volume is on the ERC20 side. So it's like a meme coin with utility. Yeah. Is what it feels like to me right now.
And We've got meme coins already that solves that job to be done.
Right? Like
I don't need the NFT part. Just
it's like now it's too tangible. It's like I want it to be more just speculative and ephemeral. And I haven't seen any that are like Oh, that's super cool. Someone was asking me about ERC20i or something.
Oh,
like,
that's the stupidest thing ever. I saw that and people were excited about it. It's so stupid.
I was like, the mushrooms,
Yeah, I
the
saw it.
fungies. Yeah. Like, I don't get super excited about the new token standards until people I know who are way smarter than me. Like if Death Beef adopts a new token standard and does something, I'm
100%.
paying attention. I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, this is fucking important.
Yeah.
But when it's just like the flavor of the month thing on Twitter, I'm like, I'm gonna wait because I don't know.
Yeah.
Like even the I still don't fully understand how like the parallel agents work. Like they're gonna have their own
Wallets.
I don't know if it's like 6551 or so.
It's 6551.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I have no idea how that works. It's like I have to get my hands on it and use
To
it.
play it, and understand it. Yeah,
But
I
I'm
think that's
excited
fair.
for that. Like the parallel AI agent
Yeah,
stuff.
let's talk about AI a little bit. We haven't talked about AI.
We gotta
yet.
get
the
into
hottest
this
topic
is-
of all of it.
This
yeah.
is a dense podcast. We're really running through it.
I know.
love it.
We're already at an hour 45 minutes.
Okay, cool.
Time flies when
Wow.
you're having fun.
All right, cool.
We can also totally talk about something that is not like your investment thesis on things, but I'm having a good time.
We can talk. Let's talk about AI stuff.
Yeah.
Let's talk
we
about
can-
AI, and then I
yeah,
want to
yeah.
learn a little bit more about you not in crypto before we
Okay.
wrap up. But let's
Yeah.
talk some AI.
Cool. Where do you guys want to start
I'll
off?
let you go.
All right, so I think like I've spent a good amount of time looking into the AI stuff. How do you guys, as more like the fun side of things,
Yeah.
how do you, and I think this is very poignant as to right now, but this will be a few months later, how do you sift through what is founder comes to you, I have this AI idea, what's Vapor trying to catch the winds
Yeah.
of this new meta that people are excited about, and like what's a real legitimate thing where someone has a unique idea that is going to
Yeah.
be exciting long term?
Yeah, so the only way to answer that question is to get reps. And it's kind of like I remember having spent so much time and writing so many articles about NFTs in mid 2020 through mid 2021 that when founders would pitch me and investing in Super Rare and Art Blocks and Async and Sound and whatever, like the ran the gamut of like products and services that we're building using NFTs, that when a founder would bring an idea to me, I knew pretty quickly whether or not this was a problem to be solved or whether or not like their version of the future was like different than mine. And the only way you can do that is by benchmarking to like the amount of time that you've spent thinking about the category through the lens of different products and services. And that only happens like as you spend more time with the category and like dive in. Where I'm at in that process is I would say we've been making AI investments for the last couple of years, but it is such an evolving category that my confidence in being able to answer that question perfectly is still, I would say, like I'm still not there, and I would argue that most investors aren't there.
Yeah.
The world isn't there. This is such a transformative technology that likely has the power to like on some timeline disrupt even how products get built and how we even engage with the world. That like, I mean, like it's pretty mind bending. Today, it's clear that this concept of being able to, scrape data or find data and train that data and then tune that data and then inference that data can lead to like some interesting 0 to 1 outcomes. Like I think ChatGPT proved that like there is a line that's getting created, like a verticalization around the category of how AI and LLMs can work that is valuable. It's like, 100 million people, 200 million people are using ChatGPT. It's like very clearly has product market fit and they're paying for it. So if you just look at that stack and you just go through one by one, it's things like data scraping, it's things like training, it's things like fine tuning, it's things like inference, it's applications that are building on top of those outputs. And you ask the question, can crypto or blockchains or the properties of either of those things solve or improve any of the way that that piece of the stack gets built? And I would say there's an argument to be made that some of those pieces actually can be improved and become more performant using blockchains as like an aggregation layer for resources and for incentives. Then there's also just like the question around applications. So I think you brought up agents a couple of times in parallel. And the question is like, okay, well, now that we've got this technology that allows, let's just call it like these sovereign AI individuals that are out there in the world who are trained on a very specific knowledge set to do specific behaviors. And now some of those behaviors can even be done on chain because there's an incentive system that allows them to like engage on chain in ways that they previously couldn't. How can you, as a builder, start wielding that tool in a really unique direction to create some sort of like application? And I think Colony is like a really good example of that, which is they're building a game, and instead of you playing as the game, you're actually playing your agent who's playing the game, which is a very meta way to think about like a new type of immersive experience around like a gameplay that leverages this technology. I find that design format quite fascinating.
Same.
I think Colony is going to be the next version of Cookie Clicker.
I can't wait.
In a good way. I mean,
it's
the best
it's like
compliment
in my head, World of Warcraft for people who don't have time to make World of Warcraft their life. It's like you have your character
that you work with that comes back to you and reports, and like you guide them, instruct them, and prompt them in new directions.
but you're not grinding for 12 hours, not showering, not
It's
eating.
honestly, I'm as someone who's been a gamer for most of my life, just like cannot wait to like actually play this, because I think the design format is gonna be like rocket fuel. Everyone is gonna see this and be like mind explosion, and want to start leaning more into like how to leverage this tech stack in ways to create new types of games and entertainment, which is like, we're just at like that very first stage, which is very exciting.
No, I agree. As a gamer, I don't have the time. Like, it's time is my biggest constraint now. And as a kid, as a young adult, all my time went into games.
Yeah.
Now I won't play a game if I can't put a lot of time into it, because I either want to be one of the best people in the game or on the server, or I don't want to play it at all.
Yeah.
And then agents come out and it's like, whoa, I'm playing 24/7, but I can decide when I want to, change inputs up, communicate with my character. I can let him go for a day or however long, and still be accumulating.
Do you remember at the very beginning of this conversation, we were talking about crypto as the game?
Yeah.
Parallel Colony in many ways is like the perfect manifestation of that, which is this character and this colony. There's like this overlap between like this very opinionated gameplay that's been created by the Parallel Studios and the ability to do on-chain actions, which we're doing all the time. We're playing as we play crypto the game. And so if you can take those ingredients and put them together in a really compelling package, I mean, you're essentially, this is the visual abstraction that I was talking about. It's like a very clever way to bring these two things together that allow you to maybe engage in opportunities in crypto and do things in crypto. Meanwhile, you're also playing this very opinionated game. And I think that will be dissected in different ways by different game developers over time. But like, I think that overlap meets the market at a very interesting time.
Yeah, you guys ever play any survival games? Like, my friends and I used to play a lot of Ark Survival Evolved back in the day, and like, to me, it's a really great example of that, where those games, like the skill of the game because of how it existed, or same thing with Rust, basically came down to like, how much free time do you have? Yeah. And I think like something like this is such a more interesting version of that game, where you can basically say like, everyone is always playing 24/7. And so then the skill becomes, how are you smarter than the other people who are playing and stuff? Not just like, who can hire the most Chinese players to come and farm for them.
Yeah.
Because like, that's literally what the game devolved into.
Totally.
So I think that stuff's going to be really fun.
Is there a rough timeline on the colony?
I don't know if they've publicly announced anything. I suspect it's, like when people start, I don't want to say anything that's not public, but like,
for sure.
When you start to put out white papers and you start to put out,
You'd hope it comes out in
trailers.
2024.
I can't obviously say anything with certainty, because I'm not building the thing. Like, I'm watching the thing get built. But I think everyone's kind of excited about the timeline.
It's been an exciting time too. I mean, Parallel 2021, it was like more about the cards. I felt like I didn't realize I was like buying cards to maybe stake them to get tokens. So then like when the cards went up, I sold them. But then when Prime Token came out, I was like, well, I'm just going to buy this. And then the avatars came out and I was like, I'll just buy a couple of these. And now I don't own any cards. I just own the token and the avatars, and I'm just ready for the game. Like, excited as a consumer.
That's a really, really interesting data point.
Have you played the card game at all?
Yeah, I played like 20 games, and I bought all the summer of base. They did like, you could buy each, there's like $5 different packs for each faction.
Was it free or $20 or something super cheap?
I think it
was really cheap. But
0.05 ETH or something per.
Okay.
Which now isn't as cheap as it was then.
That's true.
Yeah, but back then it was like, I think under $100 for each pack.
Yeah.
So I bought all those. I played as each one, like, oh, which one do I like?
Yeah.
Aesthetically, I loved Earthen. Gameplay wise, I was more like Shroud or Cathari, and then I just don't think correctly about card games. Like I need some type of Twitch reaction. Like I'm more of like the
Totally.
the MOBA player.
There's different games for different gamers. So
And
like,
I'm not like as good as TFT. Like the way I play TFT, where he's really good at, is like I copy like 2 strategies. I just force them. I don't pivot, and if they don't work out, I go to the next game. Like,
Go next.
Very little.
I'm curious about the card game stuff and how it continues to grow because, like, I mean, so I love the Parallel guys. I think they're really smart. My opinion, and I've told them this, is like I think that trading card video games are like a dying breed of game. Personally, I think part of this is because of my personal preference of tactics games and auto battlers.
Yeah.
I think that they are just a better version of card games in a lot of ways. They hit a lot of the same notes, but in a more interesting dynamic.
So let me say 2 things about that because I think it's a really interesting point. The first thing I'll say is I think they've nailed. Say what you will about like the longevity or the durability of the TCG, they've nailed it.
Oh
like,
yeah, I mean it's as good as playing Hearthstone.
We had Parallel at my office last night doing demos, and it was awesome because I had a bunch of people come up to me that are in my portfolio. I had one portfolio founder tell me, and I had never heard this before. He's like, I'm a top 20 player on the Parallel TCG right now. Like I'm fucking fanboying right now that these guys are here and I get to interact with them. Like this is so much fun. And I was like, well, how'd you get into like the format? And he's like, I've been playing competitive Magic and like TCGs for a very long time. And I was like, well, how does this stack? He's like, I don't even mess with that anymore. It's like, this is the intersection of all my interests. It's crypto. These objects are ownable and tradable. And the TCG is so stellar that like, I just spend all of my time, I think he said something like 2 to 3 hours a night, just like playing TCG on Parallel, which is super fun. I think to your point, like that format might not be like the most durable format long run, B, the most interesting for very specific types of gamers. And I think the thing that Parallel Studios understands is that these objects, these assets, don't have to be linked to a single game anymore.
I think that's the thing people misunderstand about Prime and Parallel and all
100%.
that is that they're a game studio. They're not
a
making
studio,
a card game.
dude. They are thinking really big.
Their world building / lore is very engaging.
Yeah.
Like even though I didn't love the card game, like I love the characters, reading about them, how they interact, the different stories behind the different colonies. Like it's very well thought out.
I don't think it's crazy for me to say this, but like I think it's become clear, hopefully to the market or to the public who's like looking at this stuff day to day, that their ambitions are pretty expansive. Like they're not looking at one thing; they're looking at like a multi-game, multimedia studio here. And
I really like the art too. Like their artists are great.
I think that they've really, of all the gaming teams in crypto, they're the ones who I feel like have positioned themselves the most to be the Riot Games or Epic of crypto, where it's just like we put out good fucking games, and we have games for different types of people who want to play different types of things. Yeah, and they to me would be like the clearest bet on that as a team.
They definitely are. If you've interacted with them, they are very sharp. Very, very, very sharp.
We love Kalos.
Very qualified team.
Of all the games, I've been going to the CoinGecko Gaming tab and looking at the value of all the games. And I'm not to just keep talking about Prime, but like I look at everything else and I'm like, how is this relative to everything else? We're talking about meme coins and how everything's just relative. It's like, how is this stuff at the top of the gaming and like parallels, like, I don't know, token 120 or something on this list when I don't want to pick out any of those games in particular and throw shade, but like a lot of them can't keep my interest for more than 30 seconds.
Yeah.
And it's just felt like, am I crazy? Are my friends crazy? Or are we just early and right? And that's a problem I have all the time in this space.
No, totally. These are great questions.
Because half the time I feel like I'm early and right.
Yeah.
And the other time I'm provably crazy because what I thought I was early and right on was not.
So I don't know the projects you're talking about, but I will say, just broadly, this space is very rewarding to people who know how to message on short-term value. And the thing it's not super reflected of, like if you look at whatever the top 100 or top 150 projects on CoinGecko is, sometimes, I mean, like you can pick out a bunch of projects in there that are like, is that project really, that should be there? Like I'm not going to throw shade. I don't need the army coming after me, but Yeah, I just think the parallel guys have just been shipping quietly and know that there's, a moment that may come where things are just explosive, and they're all about the work and letting the work speak for itself, which is cool.
Yeah, I think that's important.
So yeah, let's get outside of crypto a little bit.
Yeah.
You said you got married last year. Did you guys go on a honeymoon anywhere?
Good question. We did a little mini moon.
Nice. I feel like as is tradition these days.
Yes, we did a little mini moon just because like things were a little crazy. But we are actually planning a longer honeymoon for early next year.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very exciting.
Yeah, I think my wife will be happy you asked that question.
We still haven't been on our honeymoon.
Yeah, you gotta get on that.
My advice to everybody is just plan it.
Yeah.
Because we've been married for like over 5 years now.
It's hard. Like schedules get busy.
It was a different world. Like when we got married, it was, working the old job I was talking about earlier and not, super wanting to spend a bunch of money and go to a honeymoon. Now it's like, okay, we can go wherever we want, but the market, and do I want to go somewhere and be not present because I'm perceiving that there's this great opportunity cost in the market that I want to take advantage of. You live in LA still. Mm-hmm. You grew up in LA.
Yep.
What do you like about LA? Because
I know LA gets a lot of shade. What I'll say first off is like LA is actually it's one name, but it's many cities. And so like when you go to LA or you visit LA, it can be overwhelming because like first of all, it's very sprawling. It's a very sprawling city, and there are parts of LA that just might not be suited for you. And so like when my advice to people is like if you really want to go to LA, do some research on like what neighborhoods you might actually want to spend like a long amount of time in, like call it 3 to 5 days. Maybe you like the beach, and so you want to be in Malibu or Venice and like really spend your 3 to 5 days there. Maybe you really like I've lived everywhere in LA. Maybe you really like the East Side, and which is like much more cultural and interesting, and like I think most of the creative class lives on the East Side. So that's things like Silver Lake or Echo Park. It's like where a lot of movies are filmed. It's like where a lot of people in Hollywood and musicians all live. Like you go into, Erewhon or
just run
whatever. You just run into people that you've seen on TV, right? That's like the East Side. Downtown has been like somewhat revitalized over the last 20 years. It's still kind of emerging, but like I would say it's like very much a professional. Like my younger brother is a working attorney, and he was living in a downtown loft for many years. He's now since moved. There's like Culver City. There's like other parts of the West Side that are like more about like the university and has like a much more of like a early 20s, late teens vibe to it. And so you get stuck in a location that you just don't want to be in. It's kind of hard to get out just because like it's very sprawling city, and like we don't have great public transit, admittedly.
No, and then the Uber, you're just on traffic,
and then you're sitting in traffic. And so it's like,
that one time where we wanted to like go get Korean barbecue in LA,
dude.
And we were like, it's gonna be a 2.5 hour Uber ride to go like a few miles.
Yeah,
and we were like, we're just not gonna get Korean barbecue.
It can be brutal.
Parks Barbecue. Have you eaten there? Does that sound familiar? Parks Korean Barbecue.
I don't think I've been there.
Natasha took us there post book.
Okay.
I think she lives in Glendale.
Okay, Glendale's awesome.
But
beautiful part of town.
When we're down in LA, she's like our tour guide. She's like, all right, we go here, hit this up, and having somebody there.
You need somebody there, and like you should also do some pre-work on like where you want to be. Yeah. LA is awesome. It really is awesome, but it also is like many cities, and so you just need to like know.
I'm the asshole who just likes to get an Airbnb in the hills and then just tell everybody they need to come
drive up and
to
see
me.
you.
Yeah. And then you could stay there as long as you want. You could spend the night.
That's definitely a way to play it. Yeah.
I love the walks, like the scenic vibe when you're just going up and down trails. It's all green. It's all lush. It's all humid. A lot of people
don't realize how green LA is. Like there's pockets of beautiful.
I didn't realize how beautiful California is. Honestly, like I'm from Ohio.
Yeah.
A lot of corn and soybeans and flat fields.
We did our honeymoon in Napa.
Oh, cool.
And I had never been.
Beautiful part of the country.
I had never been I didn't realize how much, it's like, of course it's Mediterranean because they do wine there. I didn't realize how much it felt Mediterranean, like just the weather and everything until you get there and you're like, wow, this makes me feel like, it's not the same obviously, but it makes me feel like I'm in Italy or in these places. And I didn't expect it to be as like visceral of a feeling. And
I totally get it.
As I anticipated.
California's amazing. And I know the one thing I will say is in LA, I probably have like 15 or 20 founders in LA. Most of our industry, for better or for worse, is New York and it's San Francisco.
Yeah, Williamsburg.
Yeah. And so there is a little bit of that. That's like, it's both good and bad. It like allows me to not have to do as many IRL meetings, right? So like I can really just crank on a computer for 12 hours with like the really heavy lifting. But you know, like you miss things. So there's trade-offs, which is why we've got great investors at Collab that live in New York and Chicago and San Francisco as well. So
You got boots on the ground.
We got
everywhere
boots on the
that you
ground
need
everywhere.
So
to-
when you guys have a lazy Sunday,
Yeah.
your wife convinces you to put down Twitter for
Yeah.
a day. What are you guys doing? What's like a
wow, man, I'm loving this. First of all, you guys are incredible interviewers. Like we're almost pushing 2 hours here, and we're now getting into the personal stuff.
we
It's
like to know our guests.
This
It's
is
like,
so awesome. Yeah, so you know, we really like going to museums. So like, we like going to shows. We like going out to eat. We like going on hikes.
That's one great thing about LA. The food scene
The
is
food's
awesome.
incredible. Yeah. And you know, there's always like fun cultural stuff happening in LA. There's like an exhibit that just popped open, or like there's a band in town that we want to go see, or you know, my wife is a huge Beyonce fan. Just absolutely.
Does she like the new album?
She loves the new album. She made me download it on my Spotify for my playing right out here.
I like it.
It's good. There's a Miley Cyrus track that I just love.
It's really
It's
good.
really good.
Yeah.
I haven't heard. The first thing I'm doing after this ends is going to my computer and putting on this song.
I'm like fairly confident she's gonna win a Grammy for this one. Just
There's
'cause,
like the some songs are a little slow and don't necessarily fit the vibe of the whole album. I feel
Yeah.
like, but it feels very much artistic.
It
Like,
is.
There's a lot going
Yeah.
on in it. I really like
and
it.
this is so like I think when I first found out, this was like when her and I started dating, that she loved Beyonce. She's been a huge Beyonce fan her whole life. As a professional dancer, like she sees the craftsmanship in a way that I just like didn't. I was like, cool, pop artist.
Yeah.
She breaks down these albums in a very like analytical and artistic way that I've grown to appreciate. To me, having like been the beneficiary of her talking about like Lemonade and like her last few albums and like now this album, it's clear that there's a craftsmanship and attention to detail that's getting missed by like anyone that's just like a passive Beyonce fan. Beyonce, it might be like, you know, one of the defining artists of our generation. And I don't say that lightly. Like her work is that good. So it's the album's awesome. I'm excited.
I mean, her
about it.
longevity is insane. I remember
Insane.
late 90s, my mom like blasting Destiny's Child.
It's amazing. Yeah.
And then the
Yeah.
solo career.
I mean, she has like a song in this where she like straight up just raps for the whole song. And
Yeah.
it's like, I think it's called Spaghetti. It's really good.
It's good.
Like, yeah.
It's a country pop country album in many ways. And so yeah, it's a totally new. It's like it's obviously Beyonce, and like there's a huge pop and hip hop influence throughout it. But like there's country bangers on there, which is just like it's fun.
Oh yeah. How did you and your wife meet?
We both swiped, and yeah. So I was actually this is wow, a great question. I was running a startup company at the time, and we had this trade show in Texas, and we had converted this 20-foot box truck into our trade show like exhibition space. So like it was on hydraulics, like it was very fun and cool. But like the downsides of using a giant van that had been converted into a trade show booth is that you had to drive it everywhere. So I had picked up the duty to drive it back from Texas to Oregon, and it actually broke down on me in West Texas in the middle of nowhere. And I ended up spending 2.5 weeks in West Texas working in this town of like, I think there was maybe 800 people that lived in this town. There was one mechanic trying to find a new engine for my big box truck. And so it was like, honestly, it was an amazing experience in retrospect, just like living in this small town for a couple of weeks in a Motel 6. But by the time that they had fixed it, I got back on the road. 45 minutes into that journey, the engine exploded on me, caught on fire, and I needed to get towed to like the next town. I think I may have been like an hour into the journey or something like that. And the where I ended up was like on the border of Texas and New Mexico. And thankfully, the town that I got towed to had an Amtrak. And so I was like, I'm done. I'm ditching the truck. It's staying here. I'm hopping on an Amtrak in the middle of the night. I'm going first to LA and then flying back to Oregon, where I was living at the time. And I had one day in LA, and so I pulled out Tinder. I swiped on this person, and I won't say her name. And we ended up getting coffee for that one day I was there, had our first date. And then our second date, she flew out to Oregon to visit me for a couple days, like a month later, and the rest is history.
That's comfy.
And
Yeah.
how long have you guys been together for?
We've been together now for a little over 8 years.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
The serendipitous, like, I'm here for a day.
Exactly. Yeah.
Go on a date. Oh,
And
that was a good
It was
connection
awesome.
there.
It was a great conversation. I think we stayed for like 3 hours talking, and it was just one of those.
Felt like you
know,
knew her your whole life.
Exactly. Like altering moments.
She was so comfortable enough to be like, okay, I'm gonna fly to Oregon.
Yeah. We talked a lot after that first date. Like, got to know each other over the phone and FaceTime and stuff. But
And so, what does she think of all the crypto craziness? I feel like that's something that we talk about a lot with
A lot
people
of our
on here is
spouses.
our partners who are not in the crypto world 100% and what they think.
So I don't want to dox her, but she's now working in the industry.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, so she's fully pilled, loves it, enjoys it. I'll let her tell her story at some point. But
We'll have her on the podcast one day. When
yeah,
she's ready to do it.
there you go. Yeah.
That's awesome. We love the not in the industry to industry conversion.
Yeah, it's the best.
My wife who does taxes now does crypto taxes.
That's amazing.
She's my accountant.
Oh, that's awesome.
We'll show her all the time because my experience with an accountant that wasn't her was like me spending 100 hours holding the accountant's hand and then paying them to
Were
spend.
you using a crypto tax attorney or like
I was using another
CPA?
accountant, but I was using crypto tax software trying
Got
to
it.
explain to them what was going on.
where does it's a mess trying to bridge the two worlds together for a CPA. Where does she work now? Just like
She started her own firm.
She did.
Yeah,
Okay.
so she was at KPMG.
Cool.
And she left and started a firm with one of her former colleagues, who's just like a good friend. And so they use, I think right now they use crypto tax calculator or something.
SCTC.
But basically, they like generally do individuals. They do work for a couple funds as well, just like reconciling stuff. And now she's like brought on one other former person from KPMG full
That's
time.
awesome.
And, she's crushing it.
The big thing that is huge, the most beneficial thing to me is all the weird like farming, DeFi shit.
Totally.
She figures it out, and then you don't need to spend the time explaining to her like what you did because she knows like him and I are doing the same dumb shit, and a lot of the other investors doing the same dumb shit. So you spend a couple hours.
She's read up because she's seeing the fact pattern over and over again.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so you
and
spend-
also it's helpful because I'm sitting right next to her.
Yeah.
And so she'll be like, hey, what the hell is going on in this Etherscan transaction? Like, all right, give me 5 minutes. Let me look and I can, so she doesn't have to DM you every time you do some weird
awesome.
farming thing or something.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I wasn't excited for taxes until we hired her, and now it's like I spend less than 5 hours a quarter.
It probably enables you to like take more risks because I know like it's always in the back of my head. It's like, do I really want to explain this later?
Yeah, there's some things she's gonna look at, like some
Yeah.
of these Solana things I've done. She's gonna be like, "What are you doing?" But I think for me, it allows me every quarter to know here's my estimate,
Totally.
and then here's the amount of cash that I need ready.
You can make better decisions moving forward.
Whereas before that, I was just firing from the hip.
No,
of like,
I remember the 2021 run really laid a lot of people flat because I don't think people were denominating. People weren't thinking about every NFT trade
in dollars.
in dollars.
It was ETH.
It was an ETH, and so like that as the denomination or as the dollar value of ETH was increasing and decreasing, you were actually racking up these tax obligations without like a perfect information set, and so like you weren't able to calculate is this a loss, is this a gain, how much of a gain, until like you actually went through retrospectively and like. Fuck, I fucked that one up.
Does that really change the fund landscape at all for you, where you're denominating everything in the fund in USD, but maybe
So
you're denominating?
yeah, we brought on an amazing CPA. His name's Justin, and he came from Deloitte. He's like super sharp, and we like we're an RIA, so we have to report out. We have very specific manners of reporting that we have to follow, and so like for that, and I would also say like we're not a hedge fund. Like we're very rarely moving in and out of positions. We do liquid stuff, some liquid stuff, but like for long
periods,
durations. So like our taxable events are far and few between, I would say. But an RIA's reporting status is like we've got to be buttoned up on a number of different dimensions.
Are most of, because I like think of everything in ETH, and I think of like LP expectations and
Dollars.
stuff.
Yeah, we're denominated in dollars. Our
So
fund is denominated in
they're
dollars.
most of your LPs are just thinking like strictly dollars. They're not trying to outperform their ETH stack or
No. I mean, like that's a helpful benchmark, obviously. Like,
Yeah.
because when you raise money, you got to explain like can you actually outperform an LP just throwing money into ETH or Bitcoin?
Yes.
And yeah, I would say like that. Those are the things that you need to like be thinking about and talking about and arguing for. But yeah. Anyway, it's quite complex once you get into like the dirty details.
We are coming up, I think, on the 2
probably
hour.
get to our,
I do. We have a question we ask everybody.
Yeah.
I use this to make the podcast art.
Okay.
I do everything with Midjourney. And
Love
then
it.
All of our thumbnails are collectible. So like the
that's
people
awesome.
who support the pod at the end of the season, they get
I
all
love it.
the art. But the question is, if you were to write an autobiography, what would the title of your autobiography be?
Oh man. This is tough. I'll go with the kind of tried and true for me. A life of on-chain rainbows.
A life of on-chain rainbows.
Yep.
We like the squiggles.
We do like the squiggles. I also like to think that, you know, a lot of what we're doing here is net positive for the world. And so these little actions add up over time, and hopefully we'll create a lifetime of like really good outcomes. So,
Dude, I love that. I can see a very psychedelic rainbowy piece.
let's go. I'm excited to see
With a bunch
cook.
of chains, colored chains. Are there any shout outs or anything you want to bring attention to? This will probably air in the earliest 7 weeks because we still have
You guys have a backlog. Yeah, I get it. Well, thank you guys. First of all, this is maybe the most enjoyable podcast I've ever done.
Let's go.
I'd love to hear that.
This has been super fun. Definitely the longest.
Let's go.
I would say you guys asked incredible questions. We really got into it. I just want to say shout out to like the people that are building and like providing value to the space. Cause like, you know, in the short term, it may look meaningless, but in the long term, like this stuff really does compound and build the infrastructure for an industry that I think we're all really excited about. And so I just, you know, I'm reflecting. There's like 40 or 50 founders there last night, and all of them are working hard. And, you know, many of them aren't getting the credit that they deserve, and they're the ones that are actually getting us to the promised land. So that would be my one shout out.
Shout out to the builders who are in the trenches.
Exactly.
Not getting the attention they deserve because us with the liquid hot balls of money are speculating on vaporous meme coins.
Which is also awesome. Just a different type
We are
of
helping
awesome.
stress test some of the things they built.
We're helping the infrastructure people.
There you
stress
go.
Yeah, we're helping them
Exactly.
figure out how to break things
You
so we
got
can
it.
fix it.
I love that.
Radium has to improve. It cannot get worse. Like we've broken this shit so
love
much.
it.
But dude, thank you so much for your time. I
Yeah.
know this is
Yeah.
a super busy week for you.
100%.
I know
This is great.
taking 2 hours plus out of your time to come hang is a lot to ask. So
I had to do it for you guys. This is great. I'm glad we got to do it.
I appreciate it, man.